Are you ready to get dark? Welcome to John Campea After Dark, the show where we talk about dark, filthy things, about drinking before noon, about consensual sex with one or many partners, about leaving the toilet seat up, about not putting the grocery cart away once you load your groceries into your car. Dark, dark things. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to After Dark. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here for this. Now, many of you might be wondering, what is After Dark? After Dark, let's not beat around the bush. After Dark is just open mic. It just happens to be later in the evening after dark. So that's really all it is. I promised everybody I was going to do an open mic today, but a couple things happened. One, I did a 5-hour live stream on Sunday for an open spoiler discussion. And then today, I ended up having to do a 2.5-hour live stream by myself talking nonstop for 2.5 hours. So my throat was pretty wrecked a little bit earlier. And I thought maybe if I give it a little bit of time, I'll just give it a couple hours and then I'll do an After Dark. So here we are. Doing After Dark, just taking your questions. And if you got a question for After Dark, go ahead and use the super chat feature. That's what we use on open mic and After Dark. Just use the super chat feature and send on in a question. And the super chats are currently open. I'll let you know when I'm about to turn them off. But yeah, it's a bit of a crazy day today, but it's always kind of fun at the same time because I don't know if you guys remember. So Ray got COVID and he's doing good, but he got COVID. And so I, not knowing whether or not Paris or Jonathan may have got it, I told them to stay home today. I tested negative, thank goodness. But it ended up with me having to do the show by myself. And I mean, that's a bit of a pain doing it by yourself. Open mic's easier because there's really not a lot to do. But when you got like segments that you've got all written out and scripted and coordinated with graphics and all that kind of stuff. But you know, that's the way I used to do the John Campea Show. Some of you might remember that that's back when I started the John Campea Show. And for a while, the John Campea Show was just me in the room running everything by myself. So it was kind of fun. It was a pain in the ass, but also kind of fun doing that too. Professor's X apparently wasn't listening very closely, saying, where's everyone else besides Ray? Like I said, because Ray tested positive for COVID, and we were all in the same room with him the day before, I told Jonathan and Paris to stay home, go out to the pharmacy, get tests, get themselves tested, all that kind of stuff. And so that's why they were not here today. Got to try to protect everybody as much as I can. And yeah, so that's where they were today. All right, guys, that down. Let's get on to what we are really here to talk about, which is taking your live comments and questions, shall we? So let's get on to it. And we're going to get started with, I think, Aiden Foley. Yes, Aiden Foley starts things off. By the way, got some super chat badges from people. Came in from Miguel and the Batman. And the Batman sent in like a $50 super chat badge just to be supportive. Thank you, the Batman. And another one besides that. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate that very much. All right. Aiden Foley says... where are we at? There it is. Did you see the trailer for the new Hellboy film? I did. And I'll say this about it. It was decisively better than the first trailer. Like, I gotta say, the first trailer wasn't great. It looked pretty low budget, and that's fine if a movie's low budget. Totally fine. But it kind of looked like it was shot on a handy cam, and so it wasn't a well put together trailer. And a buddy of mine is actually directing it. So I didn't want to talk about it. So, well, number one, it's not even getting a theatrical release, and we don't normally talk about trailers to movies that aren't getting either a major streaming release or a theatrical release. Actually, we never have. I don't think we've ever once talked on our show about a trailer to a movie that's not getting a major streaming release or a theatrical release. So we didn't talk about it, but the new trailer dropped for Hellboy. And again, decisively better, a decisively better trailer, because the director of that film, Brian Taylor, is a very good director. he's got a great imagination and a great sense of storytelling, and he can work with low budgets. He really can. So I was very happy to see that this second trailer to the new Hellboy movie, Hellboy, the Crooked Man, again, looked like a much, much, much better, looked very decisively like a horror film, like the actual roots of the Hellboy comic are. And so, again, I liked it much, much better. All right. Next up, we got Eddie Burton, who writes, fourth time seeing Deadpool and Wolverine and realized, why is X-23 in the void anyway? Her world wasn't destroyed yet by the TVA. And of course, we saw X-23 in the trailer. So it's that's not a spoiler or anything like that. So we can talk about that. Well, I mean, if you go back to even Loki, there are many different reasons why somebody can be sent to the void, right? Or pruned, or whatever you want to call it. There can be many different reasons. And if you paid attention, there's another part of the film, which I won't give details for people who haven't seen Deadpool yet. There's another part of the film where they specifically explain how they got there. But the reality is they don't go into the specifics about how X-23 ended up there, probably because it's not important how she got there. But like I said, the Loki series makes it pretty clear that the TVA can send a lot of people to the void for a lot of different reasons. So there's that. All right. Next up, we've got Miguel, who sends in a $28 tip. Thank you, Miguel. I appreciate that, man. That's very generous of you, dude. And Miguel writes, hey, John, greetings from the 6. It's hot here right now. Anyway, I think there's going to be a Doctor Strange film between Avengers 5 and 6. I feel like we need him and Clea going through the multiverse, seeing incursions from a different perspective. Oh, I 100%, I believe that we are going to get a Doctor Strange 3. It might even be before Avengers 5. It might even be before Avengers 5. Of course, they would have to move pretty quickly on that and have to be a surprise. But I 100% believe at the very minimum we'll get one. We'll get one between 5 and 6. Definitely before 6, because I think they're going to wrap up the multiverse stuff. But I think the events of Doctor Strange 3, whatever they're going to be, are going to be fundamental to what happens in Avengers 6. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we're going to get one in between there. And I'm looking forward to it. Listen, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness did not end up being as good as I was hoping it would be. But it was still enjoyable. Like I still had fun with it. It wasn't one of the higher level Marvel films to date. It wasn't as good as the first Doctor Strange, but I still thought it did a wonderful job bringing the one of the best character arcs in all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Wanda, to a great Darth Vader-like conclusion. I thought the whole Illuminati stuff was fun. I thought America Chavez was a really interesting addition to the thing. I love Wong, so anything that gives me a lot of Wong is good. So yeah, was it as good as I was hoping it would be? No, but I still thought it was enjoyable, and I'm looking forward. I love the way it ended. We got Charlize Theron joining the mix, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. All right. Next up, we've got, thanks again for that, Miguel. I appreciate that, man. Kevin Cow writes, I hope we see Robert Downey Jr. in Fantastic Four to get some background about his doom so we can care about it, this new villain. Then Doomsday will be better, I think. Here's the thing, Kevin, and I addressed this a little bit on the John Campea Show earlier today. I have never understood when we as film fans, and I think I've been guilty of this too, so I'm going to include myself in this. I've never understood why we as film fans have this, perception that in order for a villain to be great, in a movie, you have to first set them up in another movie. I've never understood that mentality. The greatest cinematic villains have all just been introduced in the movie that they're the villain of. Right? I mentioned like Hans Gruber, the villain in Die Hard. Some people consider Hans Gruber to be the greatest movie villain ever. Obviously, that should be Darth Vader. But there's a lot of film fans out there who think like Hans Gruber's like the greatest movie villain ever. Guess what? You didn't need him introduced in another movie first. he just breaks onto the scene in Die Hard. Darth Vader did not need a previous movie before walking through those doors amongst all the dead stormtroopers and rebel soldiers looking around, bom, bom, bom. Like, right? He didn't need a previous movie before that. Killmonger, one of the greatest villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Killmonger did not need a previous movie to set him up in order for him to be a fantastic, incredible villain in Black Panther. Didn't need it. He just showed up. And I would even propose this. Even Thanos, all right? Even though Thanos had been teased here and there throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the reality is he never did anything. Right? The extent of anything he did was, I'll do it myself. Like that was the extent. He did nothing. What really introduced Thanos to people watching the MCU was not his little minion going, to challenge them is to court death, and then have him turn around and smile. Or have him go, I'll do it myself. Or you bore me in Guardians. Like, that, none of that is what really introduced him. What really introduced Thanos was in the beginning of Infinity War, seeing that he took out all the Asgardians and he had beat the shit out of Thor, even though we didn't get to see him do it, but he beat the shit out of Thor. And then the true introduction of Thanos was Loki saying, we have a Hulk. And Hulk coming through and landing some pretty good shots on Thanos, but then Thanos taking control and beating the crap out of him and he had to run away, right? That was really the establishment, the introduction of Thanos. And I contend that had we not seen Thanos do his just one little smile or do his, I'll do it myself, I really don't think the power of that introduction of Thanos in Infinity War would have been any less powerful. So look, can it be good? Can it be good when you give a little bit of build up and set up to a villain? Sure. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Not at all. But I do not agree that in order for a villain to really, really work in a movie, you have to first have him introduced in other movies. Cinematic history refutes that. Cinematic history says that's not true. And so I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be just fine. All right. Next up. Thanks for that, Kevin. We got Abe 10 Alpha who writes, when you finally announce your retirement, I hope you will give a I'm not fucking leaving Wolf of Wall Street speech. The show goes on, but in all seriousness, enjoy your retirement. It's been awesome. I'm not quite sure why people are so obsessed with my retirement. It's still minimum a year away. It is still minimum a year away before I retire. And maybe up to a year and a half away. Like I've always said, I will retire somewhere between not until at least Superman comes out, and then sometime between when Superman comes out and the end of the year. Like that's when I'm aiming to retire. So it could be like another 18 months. I mean, so I ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But yes, I am looking forward to retiring when it comes, but we're not there yet. It's a long ways off, but thank you for the well wishes. I appreciate that. All right. Next up, 10 Alpha again sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Abe. Appreciate that, man. And Abe writes, also, speaking of speeches, what is your favorite movie speech? Mine is between Dune 2 and Independence Day. First of all, if you're talking about the speech in the Fremen War Council, best scene of the year. Best scene of the year. And the one the president gives in Independence Day is also very good. You, of course, cannot ignore the speech that King Theoden gives in Lord of the Rings, nor can you ignore the speech Aragorn gives in Lord of the Rings, or can you ignore the speech that Mel Gibson gives in Braveheart? What would you give for just one chance. I mean, Braveheart's freaking awesome. But the greatest speech in cinematic history, I'm going to see if I can bring this up. I'm not sure that I'll be able to, but I'm going to try. I'm going to see if I can just find a picture of this. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is the good stuff, baby. The greatest speech in the history of cinema is in the movie Best of the Best. Best of the Best. When that's totally the wrong screen. That's not the screen that should be up there. I'm not sure I can fix that. I'll just do this. That also does not fix it. Let me try that. Sorry, guys. This is the thing of doing everything live. That's it. There we go. The greatest movie speech ever is in the movie Best of the Best. When, on the far side there, Dae-Han, who killed the American right here beside me, the American fighter Tommy's brother in a previous tournament. And they fight and they battle it out and whatever. And the North Korean team, the Korean team wins the gold medal, right? This is man's man kind of stuff here. And Dae-Han, who is like broken and bleeding from their fight at the medal ceremony, as he goes, he gets his gold medal, right? Because the Korean team won the gold medal, even though Tommy beat him up pretty bad in their individual one-on-one fight. But Team Korea wins. And Dae-Han, broken and beaten, he limps, holding his shoulder, and hobbles across the aisle between the Korean and American teams lined up as the Americans get their silver medal and Koreans get their gold medal. And Dae-Han drags his bleeding body across the aisle and looks at him and says, it's a very short speech. Very short speech. But he looks up and it's the first words he says in the whole movie. Because all throughout the rest of the movie, we just see him beating the shit out of people. But he comes across and he says, in English, he's speaking very broken English, and he says, I deeply regret the death of your brother. And Tommy's like fighting back tears, thinking about his brother who died and all this kind of stuff. Then Dae-Han goes, and I offer myself as your new brother. It's like, grrr, fucking A, that's the stuff, baby. That's man's man kind of stuff. If you're a man and you're watching that movie and your fucking blood doesn't start rushing through your veins as you see this broken warrior going, I offer myself as your new brother. Bam! That's one of the greatest scenes in movie history. Best of the Best is not one of the greatest movies in movie history, but that scene, bang, one of the greatest scenes in movie history. God, I love that scene. Oh, that scene's so good. I get excited and just pumped up whenever I think about it. It's amazing. All right, let's keep things going here as I get my air conditioning running because it's getting really hot in here. There we go. So next up here on After Dark, we move over to who we got next. Alex Horn, who writes, if we get a new Doom after Secret Wars, it's a good compromise. Doom gets to be the big bad and stick around as a major character in later movies. I don't see how that's a compromise. If we get a new Doom after Secret Wars, it's a good. No, it's not. That's not a good compromise. That's just more multiverse nonsense. Listen, I saw somebody earlier today put it like this, and it's better than I've ever put it, and I hope I word it right. people have to start looking at the MCU as its own comic book storyline, right? It's time we start looking at the MCU as its own comic storyline, because the comics change things all the fucking time, right? The comics change characters' looks, characters' origin stories, their canon. Like they do wholesale changes all the time in the comic books, right? And when they do, people just go, okay, cool. They just say, okay, cool. Great. Right? Like nobody bats an eye. Nobody blinks when a comic book story does something that's completely in contradiction to what the comics used to be, right? They change it all the time. People need to start understanding that the MCU is basically its own comic book storyline. Yes, just like when comics change origin stories and change things, they will still maintain some things from the older iterations of the comics, but they'll also do a lot of new different things. And we, as fans and readers, are intelligent enough to know to let them do that. We're smart enough to know that we should let them do that as they flex their creativity and try new things. And we as fans are smart. We're always smart enough to go, yeah, give it a shot. Sometimes it turns out good. Sometimes it turns out bad. I mean, whatever your thoughts of New 52 are. But I mean, we as fans are smart enough and intelligent enough to know that, yeah, when you have stories running for this long, sometimes you got to change it up and you're going to try something different. And we always are okay when comic books do that. And yet, we seem to clutch our pearls really tightly whenever the MCU, regardless how many times it's proved that what the MCU is doing is better anyway, I mean, not better than the comic, but better for what comes on screen, no matter how many times the Marvel Cinematic Universe has proved that deviating from the comics was in the movie's best interests. Again, Civil War is nothing like the comic book Civil War, nothing like the comic book storyline of Civil War. Days of Future Past, nothing like Days of Future Past in the comics, and so on and so forth, right? This iteration of Marvel, the cinematic universe iteration, is doing something a little bit different with their Doctor Doom than what we've been accustomed to in comic books previously. But who cares? Comics do it all the time. They do it all the time. And so now this iteration of Marvel is trying it too. They're going to do something a little bit different. And whenever Marvel has done things differently than they've done it in the comics, it's usually worked out pretty well. And by the way, I'm just going to say this again. I mentioned this on the John Campea Show earlier today. For people who just want, just a traditional, we don't want Victor Von Doom to be a variant to somebody else. We just want the traditional Victor Von Doom, for whatever that is, even though Victor Von Doom himself has had different iterations in the comic books. Victor Von Doom has had different origins in the comics, right? But let's put that aside. In movies, they have tried Victor Von Doom 4 different times. 4 times. They've done Victor Von Doom in the more or less relatively, traditional aspect of it. He's Victor Von Doom, and that's who he is, and he's done things this way. Well, they've done that. They've done it 4 times. And it's never worked. It has never worked. So why are some people getting so precious about them trying something a little bit different? Bosconian in the live chat brings up, it's the same people who want a 5'1", 4'11", 5'2" Wolverine. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but man, Deadpool and Wolverine sure did prove that would be ridiculous. Wolverine is supposed to be 5'0". It'll never work unless you do Wolverine properly. Guess what? Hugh Jackman's 6'3". It's worked out great. It's worked out so great, most people can't even imagine anybody else playing Wolverine now other than him. Look, all I'm saying, it's okay to be somebody who kind of wishes they were doing it a certain way. That's fine. That's cool. I do that all the time. It's totally fair. But don't be so freaking precious about it. Don't let your speculation become expectation. Let go of the pearls a little bit. Understand that they change shit up in the comic books all the time. And the Marvel Cinematic Universe has changed things up all the time. Usually, not all the time, but usually to great results. And they've done it the relatively more traditional way 4 different times, and it's never worked. So just take a breath and go, I don't know. Maybe the guys who made Civil War and Winter Soldier and Infinity War and Endgame, I don't know. Maybe they know what they're doing. I don't know what it is they're doing right now, but I don't know. Maybe it's a stretch that we should say, hey, if they think it's a good idea, maybe for now we should give them the benefit of the doubt and see what it is they have in store. Because I guarantee you this. I said this on the John Campea Show earlier today. I'll say it again here. There's going to be a lot of people rewriting their history, I think, when Doomsday comes out. Now, listen, I acknowledge Doomsday might suck. This might blow up in their face. 100%, I'm not denying that. I fully acknowledge it. I'm just saying my guess right now, just like when everybody hated the casting of Heath Ledger, and then The Dark Knight came out, all of a sudden everybody said, oh, no, I always knew Heath Ledger would be good. No, I was one of the guys that knew Heath Ledger would work out really well. Bullshit, lying, rewriting their own history. When Robert Pattinson, Twilight boy, when Robert Pattinson cast as Batman, and everybody said, Twilight boy, this is going to suck, this is going to be terrible, emo Batman, blah, 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 blah. Guess what? All of a sudden after that, everybody changed their tunes. It's like, oh, no, I knew Robert Pattinson was good. Yeah, look at all the indie films he did. Look how good he was in all those. Look at all the directors that want to work with him. Oh yeah, we knew he was going to be good. Lies. You turned this church into a house of lies. House of lies. And I'm just saying, when Doomsday comes out, I'm just predicting right now, we're going to see a lot of people trying to rewrite history again. Oh, no. No, it's Robert Downey Jr. Of course I always knew this was going to be good. Oh, no, it was the Russo brothers and McFeely and Kevin Feige. Oh, I always knew it was going to be good. I'm just saying, you're going to see a lot of people eating their words when Doomsday comes out. You wait, you mark this down right now, and you remember this in 2 years. When that movie comes out, there are going to be a lot of people, and you know what? The good ones, because all the time, sometimes movies we think will suck end up being great, movies we think will be great end up being bad, but the good ones will go, you know what? I admit it, I thought this was a terrible mistake for them to get Robert Downey Jr. as Victor Von Doom, but it turned out great. So we'll see. We'll see, my friends. All right. Next up. We've got Alex Von Gollum, who writes, did you see the latest Rings of Power Season 2 trailer? I have not seen it, as a matter of fact. It's very good, in my opinion. I'm so excited about Season 2. Today's video on the Forging of the Ring also looks great. I haven't seen that either. I will say this, though, about Rings of Power. So I was psychotically excited for Rings of Power for like a year and a half. I was so excited for that show, waiting for it to come out. It was my most anticipated show before Shogun got announced, but it was my most anticipated show, and I was looking forward to it being awesome. And I nearly tapped out of that show after the first episode. Now, I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. My feelings of Rings of Power overall are, definitely had its upside, but definitely has work to do. That's my overall feeling. There were absolutely things about the show that I very much enjoyed. Particularly whenever Elrond and the dwarf were together. Whenever they were fabulous. I love the chemistry of those characters. And whenever the episodes were on them, I loved it. And then there were elements that were weaker and didn't work. And so overall, even though I didn't mind the show, I was disappointed. But I always felt that because there were positives there, and because I felt like the negatives were not difficult ones to correct, I always, like, after the first season was done, I said, okay, overall, I'm disappointed with the season, but I'll have anticipation for season 2, because if they can identify, like a lot of us viewers did, if they can identify the parts that didn't work, lean more into the elements that did work, make some adjustments and corrections on the parts that didn't, I think we can still get a very good show out of this. So I'm looking forward to season 2, but I'm not going into it with nearly the amount of enthusiasm that I went into season 1 with. Because again, even though I didn't think it was terrible, I thought season 1 was disappointing compared to where my hopes were. So, but I have not seen the new promotional material, but I will definitely check it out. All right. Thanks for that, Alex. Appreciate that, man. Next up, Craig Hurst writes, Deadpool and Wolverine win. House of the Dragon win. The Boys win. Will RDJ and the Russo Brothers be a win too? Too much subpar comic TV and movies. Should I get my hopes up? Look, if you are wise, you understand that anything, no matter how bad it looks, like the Harley Quinn show, could end up being awesome, like the Harley Quinn show. And anything that looks like the greatest thing in the world, like, I don't know, what's a good example of something recently that I thought was going to be awesome? Secret Invasion. I thought that was going to be great. Anything we think looks great could end up being terrible, right? Always be wise of that. Could Avengers Doomsday end up sucking? You'd be a fool not to acknowledge that it could. It could. But what's the probability? Well, the 4 times that Kevin Feige, McFeely, and the Russo brothers all worked together, the 4 times that happened, we ended up with Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. So while it is absolutely possible that Doomsday could suck, 100% it could. Is it probable that it'll suck? Or is it probable that it'll be great? I say it's probable that it'll be great. Not a guarantee, not a home run, but it is probable that it's going to be great. At least that's my guess. All right. Next up. We've got Alex von Golmigan who writes, 1 of 2. I'm also captivated on the possibilities of Robert Downey Jr. as Doom. It could be a Shakespearean tragedy. I think that's exactly what they're going for. Imagine if Stark's daughter meets him. Oh, didn't even think about Stark's daughter. Only to realize he's not her father/hero. It would be heartbreaking to Happy and Pepper too. Heartbreak galore. Thanks for doing an After Dark. Oh, my pleasure for doing an After Dark. You know what? I didn't even think about his daughter. Because we talked earlier about, imagine how heartbreaking it would be to somebody like Rhodey. Imagine how heartbreaking it would be to somebody like Bruce. Imagine how heartbreaking it'll be to somebody like Peter Parker. When he comes face to face with the face of the guy who is practically his father figure, only to then 2 seconds later, that guy who is practically his father figure is trying to rip him to pieces. And the conflict and the emotional turmoil and coming to grips with that. And maybe even parts of the Avengers having to go, no, somewhere inside is the Tony we know, whatever universe he's from. Inside there somewhere is the Tony we know. I know we can save them, but he can't be saved. Because Victor Von Doom is rotten to the core. I don't know. There's so much there that you could do. Again, might turn out terrible. But I totally believe it's a stroke of genius. Again, not what I would have done. I too would have gone with the more traditional route, but This could be an absolute stroke of genius, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they pull this together. All right, next up, Cinema writes 1 and 2. So for Avengers 5 and 6, we have the return of the directors of a previously mostly loved film. Well, no, not a previously mostly loved film. A series of 4 completely loved and adored and massively successful films. Not 1, 4. Just important to keep that in mind, Cinema. So for Avengers 5 and 6, we have the return of the directors of a previously mostly loved set of 4 films and a beloved actor / character as the villain. You know what? Go to part 2. We got the last time, you know what we got the last time a franchise tried to do something like that? We got The Rise of Skywalker. This could go really bad. Cinema, my film-loving brother, that's a stretch. The last time we had a movie with a girl in it and had cars, we ended up with Joe Dirt. That's again, Cinema. Here's the thing, my brother. Number 1, it is not the director of one film that went pretty well. It is the directors and producer and writers of 4 of the most beloved comic book films of all time. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4. Your Star Wars analogy, yes, J.J. Abrams did a pretty damn good job, I think, in The Force Awakens. I really enjoy. I love Force Awakens. I think it's great. I think Force Awakens is the 5th best Star Wars movie. 5th best Star Wars movie. I think the best Star Wars movies are obviously the original trilogy, then Rogue One, and then The Force Awakens. I think it's the 5th best one. Whatever. But that was one film, right? One film that was not nearly as beloved as Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, or Endgame, right? So, Cinema, I'll be honest with you, Cinema, you're usually right on the money with my stuff, but I think this one is a really, really thin stretch trying to draw an analogy there. Now, can it go badly? Of course, any film could go badly, but I don't see any comparisons, allegorical or otherwise, to The Force Awakens. Anyway. All right, next up, we've got Malik, who writes, who wins in a dance battle, Deadpool or Peacemaker? Ooh, Deadpool. I mean Deadpool, because, well, I'm not going to say why. But from what we've seen, I think it is clear that Deadpool wins in a dance battle. All right, next up, we got Marie Seifring, who writes, hey, Marie, sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Marie, for supporting us on that level. Good to see you. And Marie writes, I saw a 9:30 p.m. showing of Deadpool and Wolverine last weekend. I couldn't see who did it, but somebody in the audience definitely lit a joint. I didn't know AMC let you pre-order those at the concession stand. Yeah, listen, the only reason I get it. Movie theaters today are trying to make it feel more like give you all the advantages of the movie theater with an audience, big screen, big sound, right? Give you all the advantages of the movie-going experience while also trying to incorporate more of the advantages of the home viewing experience. Comfortable sofas, your food, your meals, stuff like that. So they've introduced things like motorized, fully plush leather recliners. They introduced a number of years ago the ideas of the full dine-in experience where you can sit there on your recliner and have a full hamburger meal or have them deliver food right to your seat. And maybe as an extension of that, hey, you want to light one up? You go ahead. Now, the only reason that I wouldn't be okay with that, the only reason I wouldn't be okay with somebody doing that in the theater is because of the smoke. I'm trying to watch a screen. I don't want to see smoke coming up in front of the screen. But if it wasn't for that, I'd be totally fine if somebody wanted to light one up in a movie theater. Yeah, I would be totally fine with it. It's just that it would be interfering with my thing. So hopefully, Marie, These people did not interfere with your viewing experience of Deadpool and Wolverine. And thank you again for supporting us on that level. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see. Next up, Jermaine King writes, John, is this your first After Dark since 2020? No. I actually did one or two in the past year or so. I think the last one I did might have been about 6 or 7 months ago, but it's definitely been a while. It's definitely been a while since we did one under the label of After Dark. All right. Marie also writes in again, getting double characters on this keyboard. Thanks. Oh, I see in your last thing because your last message, did that happen? Did you get a couple of double types? Couldn't see you did it, but with 2 T's. Okay, I see it. Got it. Got you, Marie. No problem. That's easily fixable. All right. We still have more to go here. Give me a second. I have to reload the page. Reloading the page. There we go. Okay, now I just got to see if I can find Marie again. Where did Marie go? There's Marie. Okay. Next up, we've got Christopher Brickner who writes, that's a typo. With RDJ's new contract, I get why Marvel changed their minds on the Russos doing Avengers 5 and 6. Here's the thing. I don't think Marvel changed their minds. What I think happened was, and this is just a guess, but I think it's a pretty sound, I think this is logical and makes sense. Because you guys remember there was a story we reported on. There was a story that went out there that said, and it came from Jeff Schneider, who is a terrific reporter, but doesn't get everything right. But Jeff Schneider put out a report that said Joe and Anthony Russo wanted to do a new Avengers film, but that Kevin Feige rejected them, right? Well, clearly that isn't true because here they are direct. Here's what I think actually happened. What I think actually happened was Ryan Reynolds has told the story that him and Sean went to Kevin Feige with multiple pitches about how they could do Deadpool, the new Deadpool movie, how they could do Deadpool 3. And Ryan Reynolds talks about how Kevin kept shooting the ideas down. Like Kevin wasn't going to do it until it was the right idea. And he says Kevin kept shooting it down until they came to him with the final idea. And he said, that's it. That's the one. Let's go. What I think probably happened was just that it got communicated to Jeff improperly. What I think then probably happened was that Joe and Anthony Russo were bringing ideas. Like I think they had already agreed to do the next movie, and that they were at the stage where they were now bringing their ideas and their pitches to Feige, and Feige was probably shooting some down, just like he shot down some of the Deadpool ideas. And what probably got communicated to Jeff was, and again, I'm just guessing here, was, oh, Feige rejected the Russo brothers. When what in actuality it probably was is like, no. He just probably shot down their latest pitch until they came up with the idea and the pitch that sold it. That's my guess of what happened there. So I don't think they changed their minds on the Russos. I think they were probably always set on the Russos. At least that's my guess at any point. All right. Thanks for that, Chris. Next up, we've got Billy Bug, who writes, John, do you think the new Guardians team, led by Rocket, from the post-credits of the third Guardians movie will return in Doomsday or Secret Wars? You know what? That's a good question. My guess is no. I don't think they will. I think we might see a couple of characters. I definitely think the end of Guardians 3 said Star-Lord will return. So I fully anticipate and believe we're going to see Star-Lord back. We could also see Rocket. Might even see Mantis back, even though she's not technically part of the Guardians anymore. But I could see Mantis coming back. We're not going to see Dave Bautista back. So I'm going to say no to the new Guardians team, but maybe 1 or 2 members. Maybe. I mean, definitely Peter, but he's not in the Guardians anymore. And maybe Rocket. But my guess is, and it's just a guess, Billy Bug. But my guess is we're not going to see the whole team back. All right. Next up, Christopher Brickner writes in. Stephen McFreely is a good writer with great credits outside of Marvel. I'm nervous about Christopher Marcus not co-writing it with him like before. I wouldn't be worried about that. Like, yeah, Marcus and McFeely like worked together on a lot of those Avengers films, right? But I don't know why Marcus isn't there too. He might be off working on other projects now. He might not be writing more. I honestly haven't looked it up, but I have no worries about it. I have zero worries about it. I think it's going to be great. And so, but listen, I already thought it was a great idea before we even knew that McFreely was coming back. When I thought it was going to be neither of them, I still thought it was going to be fine. But knowing that he's back too, that just makes it even better. So I'm not, honestly, Christopher, I'm not worried about that right now. Not at all. All right. Next up, we got Brandon Beal who writes, just showing support. Oh, thank you, Brandon. You've been a trooper the last few days with the open spoiler, the show, and now in After Dark. We appreciate you, John. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And it's a lot of fun doing this. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate that, Brandon. Thank you just for sending that in to be supportive. That's really nice, man. All right. Next up, D Games writes, one of two. I finished Game of Thrones and caught up on House of the Dragon. I think it's a worthy successor, but I haven't connected to the characters the same way. Not sure why. Maybe it's because mainly focuses on one house. Like Otto, though. Something about those hands of the king that I love. Me too. P.S. Game of Thrones Season 8 was good, but I get why people didn't like it. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Season 8 of Game of Thrones is really good. I don't care what anybody else says. But I get why others may not like it. I get it. I do. But I thought it was spectacular. There's a reason it won more Emmys than any other season of television in history. But that's just me. I would say this, D Games, though. Remember that you had 8 seasons of Game of Thrones to get attached to a lot of the characters, right? We're not even all the way through 2 seasons yet. Like, we're 1.8 seasons into it. And they did a big time jump. So and Viserys died, kind of like the way Sean Bean died in the first season. Viserys dies. He was the best character in the show. But our young Rhaenyra and Alicent were then taken out of the show and replaced with the older version. They had to do that because they move forward in time. And so I would say, try not to make comparisons about how attached we get to certain characters in this show as compared to another show that literally had 8 seasons, right? Let's maybe evaluate that after 4 or 5 seasons, if House of the Dragon gets 4 or 5 seasons, that is. All right. Great question, though, D Games. I appreciate that, man. All right. Next up. Zachary writes, thanks, John, for bearing with me during the Hall H coverage. No, you already wrote that in. Don't worry about that, Zachary. With all the excitement, I didn't realize you would already have all the updates ready. Well, yeah, see, that was the thing, Zachary. I think the whole point of the stream was for us to give the updates. And so, but listen, man, I certainly appreciate the fact that you were trying to be helpful. Like, I totally appreciate that. So no worries about that, Zachary. I appreciate you. All right, Drew Gretsch writes, never mind, not going to read that. Dwayne writes, while MCU Phase 4/5 isn't as good, they really had mostly great villains, antagonists with the movies compared to before. Icarus, Wenwu, Green Goblin, Gore, Wanda, Namor, High Evolutionary were great. Okay, look, Wenwu, absolutely. Wenwu, such a freaking great antagonist. Such a good antagonist. I would say, though, that a lot of the villains for me personally, at any rate, a lot of the villains in phases 4 and 5 were very much like a lot of the villains in phases 1, 2, and 3. Absolutely serviceable, did their job, but they were in movies, which is the vast majority of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, where Marvel likes to put the vast majority of the emphasis on the heroes. Antagonists or villains are really in their movies to just push the hero along their hero's journey, right? The full thrust of the attention of their movies are not meant to be on the villains. They by design, I don't think they go out of their way to try to make these big memorable villains. They want the movies to be focused on the heroes because they believe that's where the audience gets their most enjoyment from. And for the most part, they're right. For the most part. So I think characters like Namor, I thought he was a pretty good antagonist. He was a good antagonist. He was good. But I don't think we're going to be talking about Namor in Black Panther 2 5 years from now. The High Evolutionary was a good villain, but I don't think we're talking about the High Evolutionary anymore. Listen, I've had a lot of people write in over the last number of months about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't think one person's written in about the High Evolutionary because the Guardians 3 was not the High Evolutionary's movie. The High Evolutionary was a function of plot. And that's how Marvel usually treats them. So other than Wen Wu, I don't know that the villains in phases 4 and 5 were much better than the villains in 1, 2, and 3. I really don't, but that's just me. It's totally subjective. That's just how they hit me. All right. Thanks for that, Dwayne. All right. Next up, Marie Seifring writes, did Marvel give updates about Disney Plus projects like Agatha all along? No. Now remember, I said going into Comic-Con that what I had heard was that Marvel was mostly going to focus on, or was going to exclusively focus on, the cinematic stuff and none of the television stuff at Comic-Con, and that they give most of their attention to the Disney Plus stuff at D23. Now, they might also mention some movies because they didn't talk about movies we know are coming. They didn't talk about Shang-Chi 2. They didn't talk about Doctor Strange 3. They didn't talk about Thor 5. Like, they didn't talk about a lot of movies, or Armor Wars. They didn't talk at all or even mention a lot of these movies or Blade that we know are coming. So they might mention those at D23, but I think the main emphasis at D23 will be television stuff like Agatha, Daredevil, Ironheart, stuff like that. So I think they're probably going to focus more of their stuff at D23 on Disney Plus, and with maybe some mentions of the other movies. All right. Next up, Danny Sanchez writes, I did a double take when I saw After Dark Live. Here we are. It's been a while, but we're doing it here. Good to have you here, Danny. All right. Billy Bug writes, in case you don't know, the new Guardians team consists of Rocket, Groot, Kraglin, Cosmo, Adam, Thelia. I've never known what the girl's name is. I never knew what the little girl's name was. There you go. And the Blurp pet. Yeah, but again, I really don't think we're going to see that team in the new Avengers movies. I think maybe Rocket. And I think that might be it. Right? Any others are going to be ones that aren't even in the Guardians anymore. Obviously Peter, because it did say Peter Quill will return. So we're going to get Star-Lord back. And maybe Mantis. And then out of that, I think out of the new team, I think it's only going to be Rocket. Again, I don't know that. I haven't read that anywhere. That's just my guess. All right. And now that James Gunn isn't in DC, I don't know if Sean Gunn's going to be sticking around there as Kraglin. All right. Mike Larry writes, MCU Theory Part 1. It's revealed that Tony was the anchor, and we're not going to talk about that because that's getting into some spoilery stuff. Sorry about that, Mike, but you're getting into some plot details of Deadpool that's not been revealed in trailers, so we can't discuss it. Sorry about that, man. Grossest movie death that was too much for you. Grossest movie death that was too much for me. Okay, this might sound like a weird one. Remember Shaun of the Dead? Love that movie, by the way. But in Shaun of the Dead, there's a death in Shaun of the Dead that is like really, really gruesome. Like really gruesome. When they're in the Winchester and the zombies break through a thing and they get a hold of the guy with the glass, and he's just there on his back as the zombies rip his stomach open and start pulling his guts out as he's still alive and screaming. Like even though it's a rom-com a romantic comedy with zombies, and even though it's a lighter-hearted movie, I remember that was like deaths in movies don't really get me. Oh, there's one or two, Braveheart's death was pretty gruesome too in Braveheart. But I mean, most of them don't because it's movies, it's make-believe, right? But for whatever reason, that one death in Shaun of the Dead is a really, really gruesome one to me. Like that's one that really hits home, and I don't know why. All right. Good question, though. Let's see. Who is that? That was Mad Sinister. All right. Thank you, Mad Sinister. Next up, Adolfo writes. Okay, sorry, can't read that because we're not going to go into Deadpool and Wolverine. Guys, please notice at the very top of the chat, I have a pinned comment saying, guys, please, no spoilery questions about Deadpool and Wolverine. I got it pinned right there at the top of the chat, guys. All right. Paul writes, Secret Wars logo, Iron Man colors. Am I going mad? I didn't even really notice, to be honest with you. I didn't notice. Is it like the same lettering and styling in one as it is in the other? I'm not, I didn't notice. You know what? Now that you've planted that in my brain, I'm going to have to go and look at it later. I'm totally going to have to look that up later. All right. Mad Sinister writes, favorite South Korean movie? I saw The Devil for Me. Okay. It would have to either be, first of all, Parasite was freaking unbelievable. Ju-won, incredible. I believe that's South Korean. I might have to say The Host. For those of you who didn't see it, The Host is this big monster movie. Oh, Train to Busan, Old Boy. Yeah, these are all great. I love Train to Busan. But The Host, it's about this, it's a big monster. Yeah, you know, as many of these are. And it was done on a really low budget. And especially for its time, it looks amazing. The visual effects in it, considering this is a movie that's now like, I think The Host is like, help me out, guys. I think it's like 20 years old now. I could be wrong about that, but let me know. I think it's like 20 years old. But even at the time, with a minimal budget, that thing looked amazing. Patrick is saying it's 18 years old. It looked incredible, man. Looked absolutely incredible. So a lot of great ones, but that might be the one that stands out to me the most. All right. Thanks for that, Mad Sinister. Daily Prophet right. What's up, John? Do you have any updates on Spawn star Jamie Foxx still in the works? Thank you. I've never believed that this movie is happening. I know Jason Blum, who he's great. Jason Blum of Blumhouse. I know he's been updating it recently. He's kind of taken over the project. But I always said, because they've been trying to get this movie made for years and years and years. And Todd McFarlane, remember for the longest time, Todd McFarlane, who doesn't know dick, he's a good Canadian kid, love him, but he doesn't know dick shit about directing films. Doesn't know the first thing about directing movies. And he insisted for the longest time that he was going to direct the film. And surprise, surprise, nobody wanted to give him any money to make it. Nobody would give him the money to make it because he wanted final edit. He wanted to direct it. He wanted final approval of the script. And like everybody's like, you don't know dick shit about making movies. Why would we invest our money in your movie and let you have full control? It doesn't make, so for years and years and years and years, it just sat there as they try to get done. Now Jason Blum is in there and you know he's got a lot of the control over the movie now. So maybe it happens. I still have my doubts that it's actually going to happen. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen. I'm just saying I still have my doubts it's going to happen. Yeah, well, here's the thing. Rick Alfonso is saying McFarlane had a panel at Comic-Con and the script is done, he said. That's the stage it's at. Here's the thing, Rick. He said that 4 years ago. He said that 4 years ago. Until he realized it wasn't going to work. Then they did another script. He said, the script is done now. Oh, no one's going for that script. And so McFarlane saying a script is done doesn't mean anything. Again, it sounds like I'm bag talking on McFarlane. I don't mean it to sound that way. I have a huge amount of respect for McFarlane, Canadian brother, all that kind of stuff, and I cheer for his success. I'm just saying I have my doubts. I have my doubts, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll turn out. All right, next up. Dr. Stinky writes, Deadpool and Wolverine is the funniest film, but Deadpool 2 is still the best. Listen, I think Deadpool 2 is a very good movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I love Deadpool 2. But I think it's definitely Deadpool 1 and Deadpool and Wolverine battling it out for the best spot. And I think down a little bit from there is Deadpool 2. That doesn't mean I'm right and you're wrong, not by any stretch. I'm just saying for me, like I did my list this morning of what I think of the top 10 Ryan Reynolds films, and I put Deadpool 2 at number 7. I put Deadpool and Wolverine at number 3 and Deadpool 1 at number 1. And I put Buried at number 2 in between them. But I'm glad you like it that much. Again, I put it a little bit lower on the list, but I still love it. I still think it's great. All right. Derek Large writes, fun what if. Over under 20%. Hugh Jackman gets nominated for supporting actor at the Oscars for Deadpool and Wolverine. If Gosling can do it, unlikely Hugh can too. No. I'm going to take under. Look, I'm not going to say impossible. I'm not going to say 0, but it's under 20%. Listen, if Hugh Jackman didn't get an Oscar nomination for his performance in Logan, I don't think he's getting one for this. I don't think he's getting one for this. I think part of the thing too is that if there was anybody in the Academy that would have considered it, a lot of them will probably just go, you're just kind of playing the same character you've played all the time, which isn't necessarily fair. But I think, yeah, I'm going to take the under 20%. I'm going to take the under 20%, but he's great in the movie. He's absolutely fabulous in it. Thanks for that, Derek. Next up, Billy Bug writes, Star-Lord's return in Doomsday or Secret Wars. Well, it's going to be either of them. It's going to be one or the other, right? I think there's a good chance he'll be in both. Look, whatever you may think, the audience loves Star-Lord, man. I know there's some segment of the fandom that for some inexplicable moronic reason has developed some kind of hate on for, listen, I get it. If there's an actor that doesn't quite jive with you, it's like, oh, I'm not a fan of that actor. I don't think they're very good. That's all fair. But for some inexplicable reason, there's this segment of people out there that have this like hate on for Chris Pratt. And I will never, ever understand why. The guy is completely delightful in person and on screen. I have honestly, in all the people I've met, and I've met almost all of them, I've spent not the most time with Chris Pratt, but a lot of time with Chris Pratt. And I mean, relative to how much time I would spend with various celebrities, which is infinitesimally small. But I mean, there was like 3 or 4 different occasions that I got. And one time he came into my office and was literally there for 4 or 5 hours. And we got to hang out there and all this kind of stuff. And I have never met a guy in this business as purely wonderful as Chris Pratt. He is an absolutely kind, considerate, polite, just wonderful guy, like absolutely wonderful guy. And he's a lot of fun to watch on screen. And for some reason, people just develop this hate on for him. And all I could say is get a life. I mean, I'm not saying you have to love Chris Pratt. If you watch him acting, you don't think he's a good actor, perfectly fair. Nothing wrong with that. But this hate on people seem to have for him is just absolutely ridiculous because the dude is absolutely wonderful guy. Wonderful guy. All right. Jose Gonzalez writes, just saw Deadpool and Wolverine for the second time today, and for some reason I liked it even more than the first. Listen, I have now seen it 3 times, and I like it more every time I watch it. Maybe it's because each time I watch it now, I'm catching things that I missed in one of the first couple of screenings because maybe I was laughing too hard or the audience was laughing too hard or something. But yeah, man, I love the movie. I'm liking it more and more every single time I see it, Jose. All right, Chris R. writes, Do you think the failure to establish Kang as a legitimate villain in the MCU is what turned some people away from the multiverse saga? Or is it the lack of a clear direction since Endgame? Thanks. Okay. I absolutely think their failure to bring Kang onto the stage properly has a part to play. But multiverse just sucks. Not that there haven't been good uses of, there have been, it's the same way I feel about time travel. Time travel sucks, but there have been movies where time travel was used beautifully and wonderfully, right? Absolutely there has been. But in general, it kind of sucks. And so does multiverse, even though there have been movies that have used multiverse to chef's kiss, beautiful ways. So I think their failure to really introduce Kang effectively, I mean, Ant-Man beats him, certainly hurt, but I don't think it's the defining reason why it did, right? I don't personally think it's the defining reason why it did. I think it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's been multiple problems. That's one of them, but I don't think it's like the one point your finger at it and there it is. Nor is it's not also not lack of a clear direction since Endgame. Has there been a clear direction since the end of Endgame? No. But is that the problem? No. That's not the problem. Listen, I've said this before and I still contend this today. If we still had the MCU without a clear sense of direction about how does the whole MCU tie together right now post Endgame, how do the movies tie together, none of it would matter if each individual movie that came out was really good. Because winning cures everything. If each individual film that came out was a banger, we wouldn't worry about it so much. Like we would still say, you know, the one thing is that they haven't really tied together the universe yet. Yeah, that's fine. We would still recognize that, but it wouldn't matter as much. The problem is that the individual films they've put out, they've had some great ones, Shang-Chi, Guardians 3, freaking Deadpool and Wolverine, right? But they've also had more mediocre ones than we're accustomed to seeing. And if those mediocre ones, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, the Marvels, whatever, if those ones had been bangers too and completely killed it and knocked it out of the park, we wouldn't be worried about it. So I think it's many, many different problems that have led to basically each, collectively, the films have not been as good overall as they used to be. And maybe now they're turning it around. I certainly hope they are. All right. Next up, we got Daniel Yount writes, do you make sitting through the entirety of a movie's credits a part of your regular movie-going experience? Absolutely not. Disregarding post-credit scenes? Nope. I do not. I do not. Now, there are times that I do, like certainly when I know there's a post-credit scene, but that aside, there are times when I do. But that's usually when somebody I know worked on the movie and I want to see their name. But that's a selfish reason. But I want to see their name. But I do not. Now I know there is a sentiment out there that by not sitting through the credits, you are disrespecting the people who worked on the movie. I know there's that sentiment out there. And all due respect to people who feel that way. And that's fine if you feel that way. I think that's very admirable. If you feel that way and you sit your ass down through all the credits as a form of respect to the people who worked on the film, I admire that. That's great. For me, fuck that. No, my time is valuable. And I don't owe anybody any fucking thing. You know what I owe? I owed paying money to come into the theater. That's what I owe. I owe paying money to come in and watch the movie. The extent of my obligation to the movie ends at that. I have no more obligation to the movie after I've paid money to come in. Done. If I want to walk out of the movie halfway through the movie, I'm allowed to do that. Because I do not owe the movie anything. The movie owes me. All right? As a fan, as somebody who paid to come into the theater, I owe the movie nothing but the price of admission. And after I've paid that, I owe squat. The movie owes me. And if I want to get up and leave 5 minutes into the movie, that is my prerogative. If I want to get up and leave 10 minutes before the end of the movie, that is my prerogative. And if I want to leave after the movie's done and they're rolling the credits, that is my prerogative. God bless people who do want to sit through all of them just as a symbolic show of respect to the people who worked on the film. That's great. That's great. But unless me watching the credits is going to somehow pay the people's rent who's on the credits, which it doesn't, then no, I don't. Absolutely not. And I have all the respect in the world for people who work on movies. You know how I show my respect to the people who work on movies? Paying for movies I go to, not fucking pirating. That's how I show my respect and my love and my appreciation to the people who make the movies, not by sitting on my ass in the chair with these credits going by that I wouldn't even be able to see their names anyway. So anyway, that was probably more of an answer than you were looking for. I apologize. Anyway, that was Daniel. Thank you for the question. It's a good question, Daniel, so thank you for sending it in. All right, DZ Studios writes, evening, John. Do you think we could see Doom beyond Avengers Doomsday? Yes. Yes. Ultimately, if you know the story of Secret War, not that they have to follow the comic book story exactly, they could do a left turn or something. But I think Doom will also be the primary. Again, they don't have to follow the comic book storyline completely, but I think Doom is going to be the main antagonist of Secret Wars as well. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. They might do something different, but yes, I do believe he's going to be in Secret Wars as well. All right. Thanks for that, DZ. Hung Vu writes, love Deadpool. Hate their overt product placement. I'm going to be honest with you, Hung. How bad was the product placement if I can't even remember any of the product placement? I don't recall any product placement. And if I can't even remember there being product placement, how bad was it really? I mean, maybe you noticed it and it just shot out to you like a fly on a wedding cake. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. Maybe that happened for you. I'm just saying for me, I didn't see it. Now, I mean, yes, Leonardo is pointing out, and this isn't giving anything away about the movie, the Honda Odyssey. I don't think that was product placement because they were crap talking it constantly through the movie. So if you are bringing up a product just to shit talk about it, I don't know that I would count that as product placement. But that's just me. That's just me. All right. Thanks for that, Hung. Next up, Shashelai writes, if Robert Downey Jr.'s payday is real, can Chris ask the same? Oh, you mean Chris Evans? Here's the difference. Chris Evans doesn't have an Academy Award. I think Chris Evans can ask for a very big payday to come back. I think he definitely can ask for a very big, impressive payday to come back. But he does not have an Academy Award like Robert Downey Jr. does. And so can he ask for a big payday? Yes. I think Chris Evans would be in line for a very impressive payday were he to come back. But would it be equal to that of Robert Downey Jr.? No, I don't think so. I don't think it would. I think he's every bit as important to the MCU. I think Steve Rogers, as played by Chris Evans, is every bit as important to the MCU as Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark. That being said, Robert Downey Jr. is the bigger star. He just is. I love Chris Evans, but Robert Downey Jr. is the bigger star. And he's got an Academy Award that he just won. So because of that, I don't think he could ask for the same. All right. Next up, good question though. Next up, Red One Real Talk writes, that last episode of House of the Dragon, oh boy, one thing I'm left wondering is where Allison will be after the finale. Also, do you think we'll see Otto again? I think we will. Like, again, listen, I've worked very, very, very hard to avoid all the YouTube videos and all the posts and everything about that talk about what happens in the story of House of the Dragon later on. So I've avoided all of that. So I do not know the answer, but my guess is yes, I do think we'll see Otto again. Otto is a great character. Otto is an absolutely great character. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in the show, if he does. All right. Thanks for that, Red One. SK Zhang writes, hey, didn't expect an After Dark today. Thor footage was from Thor 2. Yes, it was, when he was crying and holding dead Loki. Okay. Well, I think it was in one of the trailers, so that's fine. Why people are making such a big deal out of it, calling for an extended cut. I mean, yes, but but at the same time, like, you're 100% right, SK, 100% right. But come on, you can see why people would want to see more, right? And yet, granted, it would require them to produce more, to actually go into production and produce a scene or something like that, 100%. But I think most of the people calling for it understand and know that that's just a composite of some Thor 2 footage with Ryan Reynolds. I think most people understand that, but you got to understand why it would be tantalizing to want to see more. Why is Thor crying? Right? So anyway, so you're 100% right, 100% right. But you come on, you can understand though, right? I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Anyway, thanks for that, SK. Appreciate that, man. All right, Jerome writes, do you think they're going to do anything with the Wakanda and Shuri before the multiverse saga ends? Well, don't they already have like a couple of shows coming? I think they're working on like an animated series and a live action series, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat, guys. But yeah, I do believe they are working on something. And it might actually be a couple of things. So yes. And you know what? It's such a shame because after Black Panther 1, Shuri was one of my top 3 favorite MCU characters. Well, top four. Both M'Baku and Shuri climbed up into my top 4 or 5 favorite MCU characters. I loved Shuri. One of the best lines in Black Panther. No, the real question is, what are those? She is so good in that movie. I love the character. Love her. But they brutally mishandled the character in Black Panther 2. Shuri, John, she in the comics, John. I know. But the comics are the comics. The movies are the movies. They're two different things. They never should have made her the new Black Panther. It made zero logical sense. No sense whatsoever. Especially when you had Okoye, like warrior, you had a couple of them that would have made far more sense to be the new Black Panther anyway. It made no sense. It undermined the movie for me, and they took one of my favorite characters in the MCU and they did a really disservice to the character. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yes, I do think they're definitely doing more stuff with Wakanda and probably Shuri before we get to the end of the Secret Wars storyline. All right, thanks for that, Jerome. Next up, this will be our last question before we take a quick break. Future Millionaire, God bless, man, writes, for the first time ever, I'm actually more excited for DC and James Gunn than what Marvel and Feige have planned. Weird, huh? Hey, listen, I get it. Because Marvel has been a little weaker. Some may say a lot weaker. Some might say a little weaker, but we can all agree it's been a little bit weaker at least. They're not at the same level that they were prior to Endgame, right? I think everybody can agree with that, right? We all agree with that. How much less is up for debate, but I think we all agree they're not quite at the same level that they were prior to Endgame. Whereas DC, they're a blank page right now. We're about to get an entirely brand new cinematic universe with James Gunn, who killed it in Marvel with Guardians of the Galaxy and killed it in DC with Peacemaker and with the Suicide Squad. And listen, there's nobody else in Hollywood who has a more firm understanding of comic book history than James Gunn does. I'm not saying in the world, I'm saying in Hollywood. I don't think there's anybody who has as firm of a grasp of comic book history and all that kind of stuff as James Gunn does. So there is a lot of reasons to be very optimistic about the future of DC. So yeah, it's totally understandable that there could be some even more enthusiasm about this unknown property because we don't know what DC is going to be, right? Like when Superman comes out, a lot of questions will be answered over even Marvel right now. I don't think the majority of people feel that way, but it's kind of understandable to a degree. All right, guys, listen. We're going to take just a quick break. I'm going to top up my drink here, give you guys a chance to talk amongst yourselves. And by the way, I am going to turn off Super Chats. I forgot about that. And I just looked over at how many Super Chats we have in, and I'm going to piss myself because there's a lot. My poor fucking voice. But we're going to get through them all. You and me. We're going to get through them all. But I am going to turn them off now. Okay? I'm going to turn them off. So you've got about 15, 20 seconds to go in. If you want to fire one last hurrah in, by all means, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to turn them off now. As a matter of fact, I'm even going to turn them off before we go to our commercial break. I'm turning them off in, where are we at? In 5, 4, hurry up, get it in if you got one. 3, 2, 1, turn them off now. Oh, and it didn't turn off. Why didn't it turn off? Let me try turning it off again. This goddamn thing is going to make me stay up all night, isn't it? Till I'm 90. Okay, there it is. They're turned off now. All right. So we will now get through the rest of the questions that everybody sent in. But first, we're going to take a quick second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, our friends over at Hungryroot. We want to thank a sponsor of today's episode, Hungryroot. Guys, you know me, I like things that make my life easier, especially things that make it easier for me to eat healthy and eat well, and certainly more effectively than trying to order from food delivery services. Hungryroot is the easiest way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high-quality groceries, simple, delicious recipes, and essential supplements. It's like having someone else do all the planning and shopping so you don't even have to think about it. Hungryroot gets to know your personal health goals, dietary restrictions, favorite foods, how much time you want to spend cooking, and more. Then, they build you a personalized cart with all your grocery needs for the week, including easy 4-ingredient recipes to put those groceries to use. Each order is fully customizable so you can take their suggestions or choose anything you want. They've got fresh produce, high-quality meat and seafood, healthy snacks, smoothies, sweets, ready-to-eat meals, kids snacks and meals, vitamins and supplements, and much more. Everything from Hungryroot follows a simple standard. It's got to taste good, be quick to make, and contain whole, trusted ingredients. Right now, Hungryroot is offering the John Campea Show listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/Campea to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/Campea. Don't forget to use our link so that they know we sent you. And thank you to our friends at Hungryroot for sponsoring tonight's episode. All right, guys. With that down, let's get back to your questions here, shall we? Let's keep this After Dark going. We finished off with Future Millionaire. We now move on to Sean, who writes, do you like the Deadpool or Peacemaker opening more? Oh, okay. So without going into the opening of Deadpool, I love the opening of Deadpool. But Peacemaker is the greatest opening of all time. Do you really want to taste that? It's the best. It's the best. I'm not saying Peacemaker is better than Deadpool and Wolverine overall. I'm not saying that. But it's the greatest opening of all time. 100% the greatest opening of all time. All right, next up. We've got Mr. Graham 91. John, I just want to say thank you for your wise words. I always tell my wife it's lonely being right. Oh, bad move, my friend. It's lonely being right all the time. So from one humble man to another, thank you. You see, here's my other piece of advice to you, Mr. Graham. Sometimes it's lonely being right. The other piece of advice is that is something you just need to know in your head, and you should never say out loud to your spouse. Not conducive to a healthy relationship. I would recant. I mean, know in your heart. You can know it in your heart. But some free advice. Maybe not vocalize that to your spouse. I think that's good. That's good advice right there. All right. Next up, we go to, who is that? That was Mr. Graham. Now we move on to Dwayne. And Dwayne writes, any chance we can start talking about Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler questions more openly sooner than other movies, judging based on the number of questions asked that are spoilery, and it seems most of this audience has seen it. Yes, but 5 days out from its opening is too soon. So yeah, maybe after a week and a half or 2 weeks, when the vast majority of the people who come to my channel have already seen it, maybe after a week and a half, 2 weeks, but like right now, it's just too soon. Like it's just, listen, because it's not like watching a TV show, right? If you want to watch a TV show, all you literally need is 1 hour. If you want to see a movie, you got to, in advance, book your tickets, find times that are available. Sometimes, like with Deadpool, I know people couldn't get in to see it opening day or even the second day and had to wait till the third or fourth. Our own Jonathan Voico couldn't see it until Sunday, right? You have to plan now at least an hour of getting ready, going out to the theater, finding parking, going in, sitting down through 2 hours of the movie, like maybe getting like you're committing like 4 hours between travel, preparation, all that kind of stuff. It's not like watching a TV show. That, hey, it's on, it's public, it came out last night. You have no excuse if you didn't watch it. I mean, maybe you do, but not much of one. But for something like Deadpool, you got to give it at least a week and a half, 2 weeks. Even though almost everybody has seen it, you got to give it time. So we are going to give probably at least another week for people to do that before we start fielding. And hey, listen, we had an open spoiler discussion on Sunday. I know, I was there. 5 hours. We did it. Lots of open spoiler questions. So we did that, but now otherwise we're just gonna have to wait for a little bit. All right. Thanks for that, Dwayne. Next up, Benjamin Keith writes, oh, it just sends in a super chat badge to be supportive. Thank you, Benjamin. Appreciate that, man. Rachel Knight Online writes, best non-traditional sports movie. For me, it'll always be A Knight's Tale. Okay, I'll allow that. You can call that a non-traditional sports movie. Kick-ass soundtrack, great story, great message. A man can change his stars. I really like A Knight's Tale. I mean, listen, the one mechanic of A Knight's Tale that never really worked for me was the blending of modern music and stuff like that with it. Like, I remember in the beginning of the film when they whole started with all the peasants going, like doing the Queen, We Will Rock You. Like, for whatever reason, that mechanic of the movie never really worked for me. But, I mean, how great is Paul Bettany in that movie? Oh, Paul Bettany is so good. What's his name in it? Chaucer? I think that's his name in it. Anyway, yeah, overall, I really do like it. And by the way, what's the name of the girl? What's the actress's name that plays the love interest in that movie? Because I never saw her again after that until she popped up in the Headless Horseman show called, there was a show on Fox a couple of years ago that was based on the thing of the Headless Horseman. Her name is Shannon Sossamon. Okay. Shannon Sossamon. Sleepy Hollow. Thank you. James Ryan was a put. So I never saw her again I'm sure she was in a couple things, but I never saw her again after that movie until she popped up in Sleepy Hollow. And then I was lucky enough to have her come, because we were doing a Sleepy Hollow after show, that she came into the studio and I got to sit down and talk to her for an hour. I'll tell you what, there are some people in some movies that are like the most perfect looking people in a movie role ever. Ryan Gosling in, what's the name of the movie Ryan Gosling did with Steve Carell again and Emma Stone? Love something. Anyway, Ryan Gosling in that movie. Cameron Diaz in The Mask. Crazy Stupid Love. Thanks, James fan. Crazy Stupid Love. So Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love. Cameron Diaz in The Mask. But Shannon Sossamon in Knight's Tale. I'm not saying in the top 1, 2, or 3, but right up there. Right up there. Oh, that girl was stunning. Absolutely stunning. Anyway, back to the question. Non-traditional sports movie. I don't know. Dodgeball's pretty good. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. So, but I would give a different answer if I had more time to think about it. So I'd have to think about that a little bit more. But I'm going to go with dodgeball for now, Rachel Knight. All right, next up. Claireborn writes, at what point do you think the MCU should reboot? I've heard some people saying they could reset after Secret Wars, but I think that would be too soon, especially since we haven't gotten to the X-Men yet. Listen, the time to reboot is once the franchise runs out of gas. And Deadpool and Wolverine has just proven this franchise has not run out of gas. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 proved this franchise has not run out of gas. So I would say this. If both, and I'm not saying this will happen, I highly doubt it'll happen, but if both Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars are disasters, might be time to thinking about rebooting. But if both of them are billion-dollar films, then we are far from being done. Far from being done. But at some point, they will reboot. At some point, they will. You know why? I'll tell you why. Iron Man has been in the comics for 70 years. I'm guessing, by the way, but it's probably close to 70 years. Captain America has been around for 60, 70 years. In the movies, and in the comic books, they can always be that age. Reed Richards can always be that age for 50 years. Reed Richards can be that age. Captain America can be that age. And you know what? Even the comics reboot. The comics reboot all the time. Maybe not cross the board hard reset reboots, but they've done that a few times. Whereas in the movies, we had Chris Evans for what? 15 years? 10 years? 12 years? Whatever. However long ago Captain America, the First Avenger came out. We had him for until Endgame. How many years separated Captain America, First Avenger to Endgame? So we had him for what? 10 years? So in real life, that now means you have to do the rest of your cinematic universe. And at some point, Chris Hemsworth will drop out. And at some point, whatever. So like what? Are you going to do a Marvel Cinematic Universe for another 20 years without Iron Man, without the real Captain America, without Thor, without like all these who are mainstay characters for decades and decades and decades and decades in the comics? At some point, they will reboot. because you're going to need a new Tony Stark. You're going to need a new Steve Rogers, and you're going to want to start with a fresh set of stories, right? It'll happen. It will happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 years, though. Again, unless Doomsday and Secret Wars are complete, utter failures and disasters, which I don't think they're going to be. All right, good question, man. Next up, Nick writes in with a $100 super chat. Nick, I don't know what to say, man. Thank you so much. It's incredibly generous of you. Thank you, man, for supporting us on that level. That's amazing. Thanks, man. Anyway, what does Nick have? Let's get to what Nick has to say. Nick says, Buonasera, Gio. Been a few years since writing in. Never stopped watching. Well, thank you for that, Nick. How are Lily and Shadow? My apologies, but this has been a burning question of mine. Hoping you could use your pundit skills to elaborate on and articulate why you dislike Spielberg's The Terminal. All right, first of all, Lily and Shadow are my dogs. For those of you who do not know, let me see. I'm going to see if I can find a little picture of them, just because I love my dogs. I love my dogs. Let me see here. If I do a search in my photo album for my dogs, these are my little monsters, Lily and Shadow. They're two little dachshunds. As you can tell in the picture, they love curling up and napping on my lap. So that's them. Here's another. This is one from Halloween. Anne dressed Lily and Shadow up as, I know it's hard to tell from this picture, but one of them is Rocket and one of them is an Ewok. I know it's hard to tell, but one of them is Rocket and one of them is an Ewok. So there you go. But those are our dogs, Lily and Shadow. Lily's getting old. Most dachshunds, I think dachshunds, especially miniature dachshunds, are expected to have like I think 15 years. Lily's getting close to 18 and she's still going, but her legs don't work quite as well as they used to. She can still get up and run around when she wants to, but her legs don't quite work. Her teeth are really bad. So she has a hard time. We got to only feed her soft food now, but other than that, she's still doing pretty good. Shadow is 14 now, but she's still going really good. So yes, our dogs are doing very well. Thank you. All right. Now, as far as The Terminal, and look, I don't mean to be glib, but normally when people say, John, why don't you like this movie? My answer is because it's not good. The jokes aren't funny. The characters aren't endearing. I don't feel connected to the story. And Steven Spielberg is the greatest filmmaker of all time, but just about nothing in The Terminal worked for me. The inner dynamics never worked for me. The humor didn't work for me. I mean, literally, there's nothing good about the movie. It is a flat, dull movie to me. Now, my wife, Anne, loves that movie. Anne absolutely loves that movie. And obviously so does Ray, right? Ray loves the movie too, as he often mentions and makes sure he brings up all the time. By the way, many of you have probably seen this. I love Anne's Jubilee outfit. This was us at Comic-Con this weekend. You can see our hotel. It was great. Our hotel room actually overlooked the convention center. You can see the convention center behind Anne. She got up in her Jubilee costume for that day, which I thought was really great. Anyway, love that costume on her. But yeah, it's just, I want to love it because I love Stanley Tucci. I obviously love Tom Hanks. I love Steven Spielberg. He's the greatest filmmaker of all time. But for me, it's just a dry, dull movie. But it's not just Ray and Ann. Chef Rigo. Chef Rigo saying Terminal is my Star Wars. But whatever, it doesn't work for me, but I'm glad it works for you if it works for you. I celebrate that you like it if you like it. It has never been a good movie to me. Anyway, again, Nick, man, thank you so much for tipping in that amount. That's crazy. Thank you for the support. Really, really appreciate it, man. All right. Next up, C Swerve writes, what are your thoughts on Apple's TV's Severance, and how much confidence do you think Apple has on season 2 after upping the budget? I'll be honest with you. I didn't love the first episode of Severance. But you know what? I didn't love the first episode of Ted Lasso either. And I almost ditched on Ted Lasso after the first episode. But I hung in with it, and then I fell in love with Ted Lasso. Severance was really kind of my same experience. I didn't love the first episode, but by the end of episode 2, I was hooked. And it was one of the best season finales ever. My wife is alive, or whatever it is he says at the end there, right? It's fabulous. And it became a sensation. Clearly, Apple has a lot of confidence in it. They upped the budget for it, not by a ton, but they upped the budget for the second season. And now it's just going to be interesting to see how they follow it up, because, man, I love that first season, dude. Absolutely love the first season. All right, next up. Sinkfield writes, consider me ignorant or uneducated, hardly. But now I know definitely, let's try this again. But now I know definitely are some just... Now I know definitely are some just to the medium being different. But why don't more comic book writers write on movies, /shows, etc.? They are talented writers. Okay. Actually, very, very good question, Sinkfield. Excellent question. So the best way I've addressed this before. The best way I can address it is like saying this. Think in terms of artists, right? Why doesn't a sculptor paint that portrait? Well, yeah, they're both artists, and they both have visual artistic talents and skills, but they're two different disciplines. Sculpting and portrait painting, while both taking massive amounts of artistic talent, they are two different disciplines. Writing for a comic book, first of all, novelists and screenplay writers will tell you writing a book and writing a screenplay are two totally different things. Completely different things. Just because you can write doesn't mean you can do any kind of writing. Some people's skills and talents and natural inclinations lean more towards one discipline of writing over another, or one form of art over another. The person who wins the gold medal in the breaststroke in swimming may not necessarily win the gold medal in the backstroke, because they're two different types of swimming. They're different disciplines. Writing for a comic book is totally different than writing a screenplay. Completely different. Want to see how? Take 20 pages of a comic book. Count how many words are in 20 pages of a comic book. Then take 20 pages of a screenplay and count how many words are in 20 pages of a screenplay. One is not more important than the other. One is not harder than the other, but they are very different from each other. And just because one writer is incredibly gifted at sculpting and cultivating a screenplay, they're in for a rude awakening when they realize, I don't have 10,000 words I can use to express what needs to be expressed in a comic book page. It's a completely different form. Just because you can write a screenplay does not mean you'll be great at writing a comic book. And vice versa. Just because you're great at writing the words that need to be written and conveying the stuff you need to convey in a comic book does not mean you have the particular skill set to write out a fully fleshed out screenplay. They're two different things. One is not more important than the other. One is not harder than the other. They're just two very different things. Just like, again, like I said, novelists have said writing screenplays is really super hard. Screenplay writers trying to write novels, like, it's a totally different thing. Like, this is not what I'm used to. They're completely different things. So the reason you don't see more comic book writers writing full, and by the way, it does happen sometimes. There are examples of it, but the reason it doesn't happen all that frequently is because just because you're a good comic book writer does not mean squat about whether or not you'll be a good screenplay writer. It's two very fundamentally different things. And that's why I have so much respect for writers of any discipline. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly hard. Listen, I've written screenplays and I've written novels, and I can tell you firsthand there, it's really hard to do both, to do either. It's super hard to do either. And as somebody who's taken a kick at doing both of them, ooh, man, it gives me a world of respect for people who can do them well. Anyway, it's a good question, Sinkfield, and I'm glad you asked that, man. Okay. Next up, we've got Axe of Dwayne writes, imagine if this isn't a variant of Stark, but someone brings back Tony from the grave, wipes his mind, and turns him into Doom. He could be evil, have the redemption arc, and become good again, and return to the MCU as Iron Man. Yes, they could. Personally, I like the idea that this iteration of the being we know as Tony Stark, but maybe in another universe is known as Victor Von Doom, is irredeemable, unsavable, can't be brought back. That being said, you can do that same storyline without bringing back Tony from the dead. Like, you can take another multiverse version of Doom and maybe have somebody go, maybe they redeem him. Maybe they don't. I mean, I don't know. But there are avenues, and we talked about it a little bit on the John Campea Show earlier today. There are avenues, if they wanted to use this Doom storyline as their avenue to not only give us Doctor Doom, but also give us a vehicle for bringing Tony back, which they might. I mean, who knows? We might. I don't believe this. I'm just saying it's a possibility. They might have Doomsday, where you have like Doctor Doom, but then in Secret Wars, you got Doctor Doom and you've got Iron Man back. I don't know how they'd approach that, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of possibilities that are up in the air there for that. 100% there are. All right. I just need to get the questions reset here. Give me a moment. And okay, let's keep things going here. Next up, we got Jerome, who writes, I think there will be a Hulk versus Doctor Doom fight. I don't know. Maybe. And look, just like Steven Spielberg is the greatest of all time, but hey, I don't like The Terminal. I love the work the Russo brothers have done in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Love the work they've done in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But just like Steven Spielberg has The Terminal, the Russo brothers have what they did to the Hulk. Right? Just masterpieces with their 4 movies overall. Yes. But just like Steven Spielberg has his Terminal, I think the Russo brothers have their Hulk. And the one thing that I did not like about the Russo brothers' tenure in Marvel, the only thing I really didn't like was their treatment of Hulk. Now, I understand what they were going for. They tried something different with Hulk and they swung big, and I respect that. But it didn't work out. And we ended up with Hawaiian shirt wearing, barbecue attending Hulk instead of the Hulk the world should fear. Instead of World War Hulk, we ended up with Hawaiian shirt Hulk. And so therefore I don't really know if it'll be all that. I'd be all that interested in seeing that Hulk fight anybody. I want the real Hulk back, but we'll see what they do. All right. Next up, Geekpool writes, hello, John. I was thinking about the opening credits Okay, we can read this. I was thinking about the opening credits for Deadpool 1 and 2 were jokes and references. In Deadpool and Wolverine, it was actual names. Why the change? Is it really mean anything though? Listen, Deadpool's always been a major fourth wall breaker. So it's not really a change. Deadpool breaks the fourth wall. I mean, hell, in the first couple of Deadpools, he literally takes off his masks and he's got a picture of Hugh Jackman stapled to his face, right? It's not really a change. It's just a different expression of it. It's still Deadpool breaking the fourth wall, regardless of how you do it. Now, whether he broke the wall in this, he breaks the fourth wall in this specific way or in that specific way, it's not really a change. You know, each one is its own thing, and I think it's just totally consistent with. I honestly think the openings for Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, and Deadpool 3 are completely consistent with each other. They're each unique, but they're also very consistent in that way. And so it's just another expression of the fourth wall break. I don't really see it as a change per se. You know what I'm saying? All right. Thanks for that, Geek Pool. Next up, we've got Oscar Stone, who just sends in a $20 super chat just to be supportive. Thank you, Oscar Stone. I appreciate that, man. It's always nice when somebody wants to send in something like that just to be supportive. Thank you, Oscar. I appreciate that very much, man. That's very nice of you. All right, Johnny Weiner writes, "Hey, John. I too have the Wolverine cup with baby Deadpool top. I love that cup. Plus the bucket. I didn't get the bucket. Also, I have Wolverine jacket. I have the Wolverine jacket. Did they have the zippers? Oh, okay. You probably meant, did you know they have the zippers on the sleeves on both sides? Yes, I've taken off. So you guys saw me wearing that Wolverine jacket on a couple of the shows. They actually have zippers on the shoulders so they can take off and wear them like that. I don't do that because whenever I've worn like a tank top or something sleeveless on the show, everybody makes me feel very self-conscious. So I don't do that anymore. But yes, they're awesome. They're awesome. I love that jacket and got it for me. It's really, really great. All right. Next up. And I'm jealous that you got the bucket because I never did. All right. CJ Rebirth writes, what do you think of the Regal Theater at Ontario Mills? Oh, I like it a lot, actually, where you saw Twisters. I moved to Ontario back in April, so that's one of my regular theaters now. I liked it very much. I'll be honest with you, it's not as good as the AMC Tyler Galleria in Riverside, and stuff like that overall, but I like the theater, but I really did like the 4DX. I really did. At least I liked it for a movie like Twisters. I think for a movie like Wolverine, it would just be distracting in a 4DX, but for a movie like Twisters, it was great. And the next time a movie like that comes out, I'm going to try to go back to that movie theater and see it in 4DX again. All right. Next up, Rick Alfonso writes, hey, John, was great meeting you and Ann and Ray at Comic-Con. I was the guy with the Filipino super. I remember you. You met us in the hotel lobby. What did you enjoy most at Comic-Con 2024? First of all, thank you for that, Rick. And thanks for coming over and saying, and thank you to everybody who came up to us at Comic-Con and talked to us. It was great meeting all of you. And Rick, meeting you in the lobby of the hotel there. I think easily the best part of Comic-Con to me was the House of the Dragon screening. They did an advanced screening of House of the Dragon episode 7 with the showrunner there, with the director and the showrunner was there to introduce it and all that kind of stuff, and seeing it on not the big screen, but on bigger screen, seeing it on a bigger screen in an audience with 1,000 people. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. And I had a great time with it. So yeah, there are a lot of things to like at Comic-Con always, but I really loved that House of the Dragon screening. That was great. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Rick. Appreciate having you here. All right, Jerome writes, think Doctor Doom kills Captain Marvel. No, I don't think so. Despite what some people think, I mean, Brie Larson is one of the world's great actresses. She's an Academy Award winner. She's a multiple award winner in different fields. And Kevin Feige really loves that character. Kevin Feige really loves that character. And so as such, I don't think we're going to see Captain Marvel going. And now we may not, after the results of the Marvels. Now remember, the first Captain Marvel movie made $1 billion. The first Captain Marvel made $1 billion. Wrap your head around that. The first Captain Marvel film made $1 billion. Now, after the results of The Marvels, and they made several mistakes on that film, but after the results of The Marvels, I don't think a Captain Marvel 3 is in the cards. I don't think a Captain Marvel 3 is in the cards. But I still think we're going to see Captain Marvel in the MCU. So, no. Although, I will say this. Just like Thanos had his big intro by beating the crap out of the Hulk, it would be a pretty big statement. Think about this. How big of a statement would this be for Doctor Doom in like the first act of Doomsday to go one-on-one fighting Carol Danvers and either kill her or whoop her ass? How big of a statement would that be? That would be pretty freaking huge. That would be monster. That would be like, that would make a massive statement. Considering Carol came down and went toe-to-toe with Thanos, you now have her come down and fight Doom, and like Doom beats the crap out of her or something like that. That would be pretty huge. Again, I don't think Kevin just loves the character too much, loves Brie Larson too much. I don't think Captain Marvel's going anywhere. But if they did that, it would make a pretty big statement. All right. Okay, first of all, let me address this stupidity. I am so tired of hearing this idiotic statement. Not that you're an idiot, Lego Knight. Not at all. I am a pretty intelligent person. And as an intelligent person, I sometimes say stupid things. I do. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It just means even intelligent people will sometimes say stupid things. This is one of the stupidest statements in the world. And I keep hearing people say this. Captain Marvel 1 got to $1 billion because it was sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. That is one of the dumbest, stupidest things ever. Do you want to know why that's dumb and stupid? Let me explain it to you. So you're saying, or as the statement says, and again, remember, Lego, I'm not attacking you. I'm not coming after you. Sir, you're a super awesome, wonderful person. I'm attacking the statement because I keep seeing the statement being populated out, and it's absolutely moronic and stupid. And here's why. You're saying, because you said word for word, Captain Marvel 1 got to 1 billion because it got sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. Okay. So by your logic, not by your logic, but by the logic of this idiotic statement, by the logic of this statement, that the reason Captain Marvel made $1 billion is because, right there's the word, because it was in between Infinity War and Endgame. So the logic of this statement suggests that if you took any Marvel movie and dropped it in between Infinity War and Endgame, any movie would have made $1 billion, right? Any movie would have made $1 billion. Okay. Here's the problem. There was another Marvel movie that came out in between Infinity War and Endgame. That movie was called Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, according to the logic of this statement, that means since Captain Marvel made $1 billion because it was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Endgame, obviously then Ant-Man and the Wasp made $1 billion, right? Right? Obviously. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man 2, obviously made $1 billion, right? Because it was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Endgame, and anything that's dropped in between Infinity War and Endgame makes $1 billion. Oh, wait, Ant-Man 2 didn't make $1 billion. Ant-Man 2 didn't get anywhere near $1 billion. Ant-Man 2 made about $600 million bucks. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But this idiotic statement that I keep hearing people come out, yeah, Captain Marvel only made $1 billion because he's in between Infinity War and Endgame. Okay, so you're saying any Marvel movie? Well, here's another Marvel movie. Put it between Infinity War and Endgame. Did it make $1 billion? Be careful how you answer. Because if you say no, if you acknowledge that Ant-Man 2 did not make $1 billion, then that completely destroys this stupid theory that Captain Marvel only made $1 billion because it was in between Infinity War and Endgame. And it didn't. There was another, everybody forgets that. There was another Marvel movie in between Infinity War and Endgame. And it didn't come anywhere near $1 billion. Therefore, logic, as I pull out my Vulcan here, logic dictates that just because you're in between Infinity War and Endgame does not mean you're going to make $1 billion. Now, I know there are people who love to hate on, I know there are people who absolutely love to hate on Captain Marvel because they don't like it. And that's fine. You're allowed to say you didn't like Captain Marvel. Where it gets pathetic is when the people try to come up with excuses for the fact that other people did and it was successful. Guess what? There's a lot of movies that people like and are successful that I didn't like, and I have no problem with that. I didn't like the movie, but I acknowledge a lot of other people did, and it was very successful. It doesn't mean I had to like it. I don't. You don't have to come up with excuses as to why something you didn't like was actually, as a matter of fact, extremely successful. So this idiotic statement, again, you are not an idiot, Lego. Lego, I mean. You're not an idiot. I'm not saying that. I say some stupid things sometimes. You say stupid things sometimes. Everybody says stupid things sometimes. But this is one of the dumbest statements that's commonly circulated around the hate sphere for people who don't like Captain Marvel. Because if indeed Captain Marvel only made $1 billion because it was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Endgame, then that means Ant-Man 2 should have made $1 billion. And it didn't. Therefore, there's no logic to it. Anyway, sorry. I shouldn't have gone off on that rant because that wasn't even part of the official questions. But I'm sorry, but that is one that it just, the lack of logic, the lack of just critical common sense thinking drives me crazy sometimes. But anyway, there's just that. Okay. Next up, we've got, where are we at? Andy writes, "Hey, John, time to update you. I've seen 9 films this month. That's amazing. Of July, and 4 of them, Sound of Hope, Long Legs, National Anthem." Oh, I'm not familiar. I didn't see National Anthem. I'm not familiar with that. And Oddity were original films. Again, it goes to the old thing we always talk about, right? There's that other statement that people always say, there's no originality in Hollywood anymore. In actual fact, more original films are made today than in any other time in history. They're just not generally as successful as the ones that are either sequels or reboots, but there are more films that are original made than ones that are not, and more than any other that have ever been made in the history of Hollywood today. That's just a statistical fact. If you go and look at the number of original films that are made today, it far exceeds the number of original films made in any other era in Hollywood history. So they're definitely there. It's just not the ones that we talk about as much. All right. Thanks for the update, Andy. Next up, Thunder Force 2000 writes, "Which do you think is worse, a movie with bad storytelling or a boring movie?" A boring movie. But it's also a bit of a trick question. If you have good storytelling, the movie won't be boring, right? So it's a bit of a catch. it's not like if you have a movie with great storytelling, it won't be boring. Because if it's boring, then you didn't tell the story very well, right? You didn't tell the story well if it ended up being boring. So it's not really one or the other. It's really more like cause and effect. Because if you have great storytelling, it's not going to be boring. So it's not either or. I would suggest it's cause and effect, but that's just me. All right. Thanks for the question, Thunder Force. You made me think about that. That's good. All right. Sinkfield writes, one of two. God, a story where Doom's main motive is simply him trying to get his mom back could be fascinating. That's actually right out of the comics. That could explain Blade and those characters being involved in Doom's practices. Unleashing monsters in our timeline that pose a threat by being here, and that corner of the MCU ties into Secret Wars. I don't really think they're going to go that way. Like, if you know the story of Secret Wars, and again, they don't have to follow because they very rarely do follow the story all that accurately. But if you look at the story of Secret Wars, even if they just follow it in a very basic fundamentals of it, it's going to be very, very difficult for that kind of an approach. Plus, I don't know that that's an approach that's going to be very... It's not really palatable to a general movie-going audience. And one of the great things about the MCU, at least until they got to the multiverse saga, is that the great thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until Endgame, and even Shang-Chi and No Way Home, is that they were made for everybody. Very rarely was one of their movies like really inside baseball, and you've got to be a comic book fan in order to appreciate this. The MCU, part of the brilliance of the MCU was that it was something that, while it did appeal to the comic book fans, it also had mass broad appeal to the general movie-going audience as well. And I think that is something that Kevin Feige maybe got away from a little bit in the last couple of years. So I don't know if that's something that they'll do. It'll be interesting to see if they do go in a direction like that, though, Sinkfield. So let's keep our eyes on that. Thanks for the question. Really cool way of looking at it. All right. Next up, Malik Hunter writes, what Marvel movies have the best soundtrack to you? For me, it's Into the Spider-Verse. Oh, Into the Spider-Verse is great. 2, the original Black Panther, and Guardians, now Deadpool and Wolverine. I'll tell you what, that Black Panther, because here's the brilliance of the music in Black Panther, okay? In Black Panther 1, here's the brilliance of the music. There are 2 different types of music in a movie. You have your score, that's like the John Williams stuff, the orchestra, right? The score of the movie. That's the one aspect of music in a movie. The other aspect is soundtrack, songs that play, whether they're original songs or songs curated, popular songs from history that are curated and brought into the movie, much like Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Guardians of the Galaxy was curated hit songs brought into the movie. So you have your score and you have your songs. The brilliance of the first Black Panther is it is probably the best score out of any Marvel movie. Ludwig, how do you pronounce his last name? Göransson? Ludwig Göransson, I think, is the conductor, the composer of the score of Black Panther. He won the Academy Award for that. Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat, but I believe he won the Academy Award for Best Score. It's brilliant. It's an absolutely brilliant score. I love it. But then, not only do you have the score is brilliant, but the soundtrack, the songs are great. Kendrick Lamar. So you had a soundtrack that was completely banger and a score that was Oscar winning. By the way, Ludwig Göransson, he's also the same guy who did the theme to Mandalorian. Ba ba bum ba ba bum 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 ba ba bum ba 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 ba. I put the score to the Mandalorian right up there with the song to Game of Thrones. I'll give the edge to the Game of Thrones piece, but The Mandalorian opening theme, is awesome. And Ludwig did that one as well. Anyway, that's the awesome thing about the Black Panther soundtrack, man. It is both killer soundtrack and killer score. It's amazing. All right, next up. Singfield writes in again and writes, I remember the first time watching one of these After Darks, and John goes, are you ready to get dark? Just the delivery made me lose it. So funny. Well, I'm glad. Hey, man, I'm glad you've been around for that long, because my first After Dark was a long time ago. And honestly, After Dark was just because it's just the name I give it. It's just the name I give open mic when I happen to be doing them a little bit later in the evening. And I just call it After Dark. And I go, are you ready to get dark? Anyway, thanks for that. I'm glad you're around for that, Singfield. Appreciate that, man. All right. Murray Reich writes, how was your experience in 4DX? I want to see Twisters ASAP, and it's playing 4DX together with Deadpool 3. Is it doable eating and drinking while watching? That's a great question. Okay, so first of all, I loved my experience watching Twisters in 4DX. I thought it was great. Now, that being said, I was more than a little nervous. First of all, I held my popcorn bucket, so I kept my popcorn in my hands. But I had my drink in the little cup holder. And every time we're going over, like they're driving the trucks over the fields and your seat starts going like this, I had to keep one eye down on my soda because I half expected my soda to go flying out of the cup or something like that. But it would appear that they take that into their calculations. They take that into consideration when figuring out how much bumpiness they should give the thing, right? And so I actually had no problem. My popcorn didn't go flying and my soda didn't go flying. Again, I think 4DX would be fairly distracting in some movies, but for certain movies like Twisters and probably like Top Gun Maverick, I'm guessing, it was a really good experience for Twisters. I think you're going to have a good time in it. And it was my first time ever going to a 4DX, Murray, and I really liked it. Next up, Alexander Teague. Another person sending in $100 super chat. Alexander, thank you so much, man. I absolutely appreciate that. It's incredibly generous of you. Thank you so much for that and supporting the channel on that level. That's incredible. Let's get to what Alexander has to say. Alexander writes, John, your voice in the punditry space is unparalleled. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. On Deadpool and Wolverine, even this deep into the MCU, it's still awe-inspiring to see a relentless talent like Jackman bring a comic book character to life. The popcorn soda IMAX experience can be almost spiritual in the right film. Oh, I agree. I mean, IMAX, first of all, there's several layers to what you're just saying there, Alexander. I often talk about my primary first go-to when I have a choice of which theater to go to. The one I'll lean towards is the AMC Dolby, the Dolby Prime, right? That's usually my first choice. But the IMAX experience with the right film is a nearly, as you explained it, is a nearly spiritual experience. And I was very lucky that I got to see Deadpool and Wolverine in my first screening in the Dolby Prime, and then in my second screening in IMAX. And I gotta tell you, man, both experiences are so freaking good. I still remember, like, when I was a teenager, the dark times when, like, the movie theater was the movie theater. You had your screen and your whatever, but like today we have formats like IMAX and like the Dolby Prime and like 4DX. And it's really amazing the type of options that we have, the different kinds of experiences we can have. You can go to the same movie twice and have two unique experiences. One in IMAX, one in 4DX, or one in Dolby Prime and one in whatever another premium format is. And you can really have different experiences. And we are very lucky as movie fans, I think, to be alive in this particular era when we've got all these things there. And to have somebody like Hugh Jackman still doing it after 20 plus years, going on 25 years, he's been playing Wolverine, which is just insane. We will probably never see the likes of that again, but it's just amazing. Anyway, Alexander, again, thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you so much for supporting us on that level and supporting the channel. And we really appreciate it very much. And thank you again, my man. All right. We keep going on here to Sir Nicholas George, who writes, "Hey, John, thanks for all the years of excellent coverage." Well, thank you. You're truly a professional. Yeah, that's debatable. Do you think Doom will have a presence after Doomsday and Secret Wars? Okay, now somebody just asked a minute ago, Sir Nicholas, if I think Dr. Doom will still be around after Doomsday, to which I replied, well, yeah, I think he's going to still be the main antagonist in Secret Wars. Now, you're following that up by asking, do I think he'll still be a presence after Doomsday and Secret Wars? I believe the answer is no. Like, once you're the main antagonist in 2 Avengers films, I don't really know where else you go. Because it's not like the WWE, right? Where you can have this big bad guy be the heavyweight champion. But after they've lost the title at 2 WrestleManias in a row, then they go back to being an undercard performer, right? And you don't do that in the MCU. So you can't have Doom be the main threat after 2 Avengers films. Like that's just then dragging that out too long. You got to move on to a new antagonist, a new threat, a new storyline. But I don't think you could have Doom just kind of shuffling around like some B-level villain after that either. So my guess, and it's only a guess, my guess is that Doomsday is the main antagonist, obviously, and that Dr. Doom is the main threat in Doomsday, obviously, but that he'll also be the main antagonist in Secret Wars for obvious reasons. And then he's done. I don't know that for a fact, but this ain't the WWE. You can't just have him around as a undercarder. So my guess is he's done, probably dead and dies after Secret Wars. That's my guess at anyway. Anyway, thanks for the question, Sir Nicholas. Next up, Murray Reich writes, "Pitch meeting an honest trailer on Acolyte is hilarious." I'll be honest, I don't watch Honest Trailer much anymore. And I don't know why. It's not like I think Honest Trailers got bad. But I used to, like years ago, I used to love Honest Trailers. Used to love them. I don't, and I'm not crap talking them because I don't have anything bad to say about them. It's just, I realize I don't really watch them anymore. But at any rate, but pitch meetings, love them. Done by a good Canadian kid, by the way. Did you know that? Pitch meetings is done by a Canadian dude? Just saying. Anyway, I did see the pitch meeting for Acolyte, and it was hilarious. And listen, I'm not just saying that because I didn't like Acolyte. I think pitch meetings are amazing. I even when they're doing pitch meetings of movies I love, actually, I think I like the pitch meetings even more when it's about movies that I love than it is about movies that I hate. But either way, I think they're absolutely hilarious. And the one they did, I'm going to need you to shut up now. The one they did for the Acolyte was absolutely hilarious. I didn't see the honest trailer for it though, but the pitch meeting for it was absolute gold, man. All right, next up. Fresh writes, "Watching Late Night with the Devil. Hopefully it's good, but do you have any horror movie recommendations?" I'm not a major horror film guy, although I do like a good horror movie as much as anybody else. Y'all know what I'm going to say, right? The 2 I always go to. First of all, you know what's was really fun recently? Abigail. I really liked Abigail. If you haven't checked it out, I would really recommend checking it out. It's really, really good. My 2 all-time favorite horror movies are the original American Werewolf in London, not American Werewolf in Paris, American Werewolf in London, and Cord Cutter Cam knew the second one I was going to say, The Descent. Those are my 2 favorite horror films. So I highly, and by the way, I'll throw this in there too, because it's a horror film. The first Alien. Aliens, one of the great action films of all time, but the first one, Alien, I think one of the great horror films. I really do. So those are 3, and there are many others, but those are 3 that I would just throw out there as a quick recommendation, Fresh. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we got Ismail Montoya writes, Never retire, John. We need you, my film-loving brother. Question. Have you been enjoying House of the Dragon Season 2 as much as Season 1? For me, it's good, but different. I have been loving it every ounce as much as I love Season 1. The one thing, and I said this on the show the other day, the only aspect of House of the Dragon this season that has not worked for me is how much they're dragging out the Daemon at Harrenhal. That whole thing, I see what they're doing. I see what they're going for, and I think it's good. They've just dragged that out so painfully long. And what's really sucks about that is that in Season 1, Daemon is, other than Viserys, Daemon's probably the best character in the show. And they've really sidelined Daemon this season. Like, he's totally just been sitting on the sidelines, going through this whole, like, every episode. Oh, he has a vision. And then he wakes up from the vision in a place he didn't think he was. I get it. We've done it over and over and over again. Now, aside from that, which I'm sure will have a great payoff, but aside from that one aspect, I've loved everything about this season. I think this season has been insanely good. So yeah, I'm liking it every bit as much, to be honest with you. I'm really looking forward to the season finale. I hope they do something with Daemon in the season finale. All right. Exotic Vibes writes, "Hey, John. The Fantastic Four footage that was shown at SDC San Diego Comic-Con was leaked online." Yep, I saw it. Did you see the footage? And if so, what are your thoughts? Well, see, here's the thing. And it's probably out there now for everybody to see. If you didn't see the footage, you won't know what I'm talking about. But if you did, most of you probably did. There's not really any point to having thoughts on it because none of that's in the movie. They only started shooting the movie today. Today is when they actually started shooting the movie. So they shot some stuff to make this sizzle for Comic-Con, but I find that it's actually pointless to have a thought on the footage when that's not footage from the movie. It's a unique piece of content that they shot and made for Comic-Con. Now, the one thing I will say is they've shown us they're going with a comic accurate, at least visually, a comic accurate Galactus. Although a comic accurate Galactus would not be looking through a building window because just his pupil of his eye would be the size of a city, not that he'd be the size of a building, but that aside. The Cuisinart helmet, which looks really stupid, but that's the comic, and they are completely going for that comic look. That's the thing that stood out to me the most, is that. So I thought that was really cool to see that. But as far as everything else, so it's the point is kind of moot to have an opinion about it because that's not actually stuff that's going to be in the movie. So I thought it was interesting. It's cool to actually see them in character. So that was fun. And again, seeing the Galactus shot was pretty startling. And I did like that. Other than that, not many other thoughts because again, none of that was footage from the movie. So ask me again though, Exotic, later once, 6 months from now, when we actually start getting some footage coming online, then we'll have some real thoughts about it at that point. All right. Next up, Drew Gresh writes, "I've seen Deadpool and Wolverine 4 times now and seeing it a 5th time tomorrow with my girlfriend. Nice. It'll definitely pass Spider-Verse 2 as the movie I've seen the most in theaters. I saw that 6 times. Nothing will ever beat for me The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace I saw, I believe, 17 times in theaters. And I hate that movie. But I was working... When The Phantom Menace came out, I was working at a visual effects company at the time. And at that point, there had never been. I still think to this day that The Phantom Menace, no movie in history has propelled the visual effects industry further ahead than that one movie did. I may have my thoughts and opinions about how the movie is overall, but there has never been a single movie that came out that propelled the world of visual effects forward like The Phantom Menace did. And so, like, at least once or twice a week, me and the guys at the studio, we would go staff meeting. And what staff meeting was code for, let's run over to the theater and watch Phantom Menace again. Because we were visual effects junkies, right? And there had never been anything like The Phantom Menace. Now, for Marvel, our record is 8. We saw the original Thor, the one directed by Kenneth Branagh. We saw Thor in theaters 8 times, Ann and I did. And we are committed to making Deadpool and Wolverine break that record. We are committed to seeing it at least 9 times. We've seen it 3. We're getting ready to go to our 4th screening of it on Thursday, but we're going to crack 9. We're definitely going to crack 9. All right. Next up, Daddy Logan writes, thoughts on the new Dexter revival sequel to New Blood? Zero interest. I have no interest in it whatsoever. Everybody knows I love the original Dexter, but after the recent revival they did, which to me was completely disappointing, I have zero interest in the revival, in this new thing they're doing. No interest in it whatsoever. All right, Jerome writes, think the MCU is going to stop doing secret cameos? No. I mean, lots of movies do secret cameos, but they're certainly a big, just because audiences are so familiar with the universe, it makes it ripe for doing secret cameos. So they won't have them in every movie. Not at all. I don't think they'll do them in every movie, but I don't see why they'd stop doing them overall. I don't see why they would do that. All right. FN Raw writes, my dream is for Cillian Murphy to take out Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom and take up the mantle going into Secret Wars. The Avengers' main threat is gone, but they still lose and an equal or more dangerous threat emerges. Here's the thing. We have this conversation all the time, right? We don't know what this Victor Von Doom is going to be like. You know, when you think about Joker on screen, Heath Ledger's Joker was completely different than Jack's Joker. And Jack's Joker was completely different than Joaquin's Joker. And Joaquin's Joker was completely different than Heath's Joker. And Heath's Joker is completely different than Jared's Joker. And Jared's Joker is completely different than Caesar's Joker, right? They're all Joker, but they're all completely different, even though they're all Joker. And Jack wouldn't have made a good Heath's Joker. And Joaquin wouldn't have been a good Jared's Joker. And Jared wouldn't have been a good Caesar's Joker. Therefore, the whole idea of saying this guy should play this comic book character, well, you and I have no idea how that character is going to be meant to be portrayed, how that character is going to be written. We have a vision of, each one of us has a different and unique vision in our own heads about how they're going to be. And therefore, as it turns out, Cillian Murphy might be the worst guy in the world to play Doctor Doom. We just don't know. So that's why I don't usually get involved. Not usually, sometimes I will, but that's why I usually don't get involved in the speculation about, who should play this comic book character? This guy. Well, that's only if they write that comic book character the exact way I have them in my imagination. But like we've seen with Joker, there's a million different ways for that character to be expressed on screen and yet still be that character. So it really all depends. So could Cillian Murphy be a good Doctor Doom? I guess if they wrote Doctor Doom a certain way, but he could end up being the worst guy for him. So I'm not really going to worry about that too much, FN, to be honest with you. But hey, listen, all I care about when they cast is, did you get a great actor? Did you get a great performer? Cillian Murphy is an Academy Award winning actor who is fabulous. So if they did cast Cillian Murphy, of course I'd be thrilled with it, but I don't speculate about it too much, but that's why. All right. Joshua Cohen writes, did you notice Bill from Warrior in House of the Dragon? Which warrior are we talking about? Are we talking about Tom Hardy's Warrior? Are we talking about the TV show Warrior? Anyway, either way, I did not notice. No, I did not notice Bill from House of the Dragon, but I'm not sure which Warrior we're talking about, unfortunately. All right, Murray Reich writes, the Regal Theater I was at opening night for Deadpool and Wolverine had the parking lot full. The adjoining garage, they closed off 2/3, 2 of the 3 levels, had to park and walk 10 minutes away from the theater. Ridiculous. Luckily, made the movie. Well, I mean, yeah, that sucks, but there are a lot of movie theaters where you have a long stretch. For example, if you go to the AMC Theater at Universal City Walk in Hollywood, you have to park in the Universal Studios lot, and you got a long trek to actually get to the movie theater. So, sometimes that happens. But you got to know, too, when you're going to a movie opening like a Deadpool or a movie opening like an Avengers or something like that, you better be prepared that the parking lots might be full. We had that problem sometimes in Burbank. In Burbank, there's a lot of parking lots around downtown Burbank, around the AMC Burbank 16. But sometimes we would drive down there, even though we were only a 10-minute walk away. Sometimes we would drive down if the weather wasn't good or something. And if it was for a really popular movie, we'd go on level 1, full, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and then go up all the way up to the roof, and it's still full. That's when it gets really frustrating. So I feel you, Murray. All right, next up. We got Fresh writes in and says, House of the Dragon theory. I know all Targaryens become dragon riders. I don't think they do. I think either you have to be accepting death or be blood related to the previous rider, like Laenor, the blacksmith's mom was royal. Here's the thing. The showrunner of House of the Dragon said, how after every episode of House of the Dragon, they have a little making of, a little 5-minute kind of breakdown of the episode and a little making of? Well, the showrunner of House of the Dragon specifically said in it that it's a bit of a mystery. Like, even the showrunner hasn't made a formula for how certain people are able to claim a dragon. I mean, definitely there has to be Targaryen blood. I mean, that's the base level. That has to be a part of it. There has to be Targaryen blood. But other than that, why some people are able to claim a dragon and then some aren't, even those who are Targaryens, even the showrunner said, we just don't have an answer for that. That part remains a mystery. So it's a good theory, but it's one that they've already kind of addressed and said it's a mystery, that we don't really know what it is and why it is. It might be different from dragon to dragon. Anyway, good theory though, Fresh. All right. Agent Extract writes, where's the Wolverine Cup, John? Where is he? Is he safe? He's safe. Here's the thing though. When I have longer shows to do, like this one, we've now been going, hot damn, when did we start this thing? I'm not even sure. What time did we start this show, everybody? I can't even remember. 8:30. Okay. So we've been going for 2.5 hours. When we're doing a longer show, I 100% make sure to use my Stanley Cup. Because as great as the Deadpool cup is, and it's awesome, I love that cup. After an hour, even if my drink has ice in it, the ice will melt, it'll start to get warm. But this Stanley Cup, I can leave this overnight and the ice cube in it is still going to be ice. So when I have a longer show to do, I make sure I use my Stanley Cup, but it keeps my ice, and my drink cold. But don't worry, the Wolverine Cup is safe. All right, next up. Sinkfield writes in again and says, could you fancy us hardcore After Dark fans with your in-depth thought on how you think this so-called reboot will work? Will characters carry over? If they focus on X-Men, how will Fantastic Four and Avengers fold in? Well, first of all, I've already said, I don't think they are going to reboot anytime soon. They're not going to reboot anytime soon. Okay? And particularly with X-Men coming, right? They're going to kind of transition over more to X-Men for a while and all that kind of stuff. Now, when the reboot happens, I think it'll be sudden. Kind of like when they would reboot the Spider-Man franchise. It'll just be sudden. An MCU movie will come out. Again, I think we're years away from this, but an MCU movie will come out, and then about 4 months later, an official report will come out that says these 2 other Marvel movies that were planned have been canceled, and Marvel's going to reboot. They're bringing in a new creative director. Kevin Feige is retiring or moving on or whatever, and they're going to reboot in 2 years with a brand new Captain America movie, with a brand new Captain America, Steve Rogers, stuff like that. So it'll be like the Spider-Man thing. It'll be sudden. It'll, to us, appear like out of nowhere. But again, I don't think it's happening for a number of years. I think minimum 5 years. And you can say, but John, they're already planning. It doesn't matter what they're planning, right? They had planned Spider-Man 4. And you saw it then you saw how that turned out, right? It doesn't matter what they plan for. It'll happen suddenly that at some point they'll just realize, okay, this iteration of our Marvel Cinematic Universe has run its course. Time to pull the plug. And out of nowhere, they'll pull the plug and an announcement will come out just like it did after Spider-Man 3. And there'll be an announcement that in a year or 2, we're going to do this. Just like it happened with DC. Because remember, they had big plans for Black Adam. Oh, Henry Cavill's going to be in the post-credit scene, setting up Superman coming back and blah, blah. They had all the plans, but it didn't matter. They knew it's time to end this experiment of this iteration of the DC Cinematic Universe. Time to end it, and we're going to start again. And that's the way it's going to happen with Marvel. Not this year, not next year, not in 2 years, not in 3 years, but probably minimum 5-6 years down the line. But it'll be like that. It'll be out of nowhere. It'll be suddenly, the announcement will come out, and then they'll move on. So that's how I think it'll probably play itself out. All right. Next up, JT writes, I think we will see the scene of Thor holding, gonna move. Well, that was in one of the trailers, so it's fine. I think we will see the scene of Thor holding Deadpool in Secret Wars. MCU, man, it's all connected. No, I do not believe we're going to see that at all. Again, as pointed out by SK earlier, that was just footage from Thor 2 with a composite of Ryan Reynolds over top of it. So look, it ain't impossible, JT. It is not impossible, but I do not think we're going to see that scene again, but you never know. And then finally, Kevin Guzman just sends in a super chat badge just to be supportive. Thank you for that, Kevin. And guys, my voice is really gone. That'll do it for this installment of After Dark. Thank you guys so much for being here and hanging out with me tonight. I know for any of you on the East Coast, it's already like 2 o'clock in the morning. So, hey, do me a favor, guys, just quick. For those of you still here, just quickly write in the chat where you are. What country are you in? I'm just curious to know what country you're in right now for those of you watching. Because again, for anybody on the East Coast of North America, it's already 2 o'clock in the morning. 7 a.m. in the UK, Utah, Vancouver, British Columbia, Serbia, Finland, Guam, Orlando, Texas, Thailand, Philippines, India, Chile, Montreal, Malaysia, a couple more Indias, Australia, Atlanta. Guys, thank you. So it is a worldwide global house of friends here. Guys, thank you so much for, I can't believe we've still got like 800 people in this live chat at 2 o'clock in the morning. God bless movie talk fandom. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys. Oh, holy shit. In a few hours. I got to get up in 6 hours to start getting tomorrow's show ready. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to panic. I'm okay, even though I don't even know if Jonathan is going to be able to come in tomorrow to help me. That's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. Anyway, guys, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.